It starts on Christmas Day.
Boring.
It's not boring.
I don't want that
There's
song.
actually imagery. You want me to sing it for you now?
Don't want that song.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
How are you, City?
I'm very well, thank you.
Karibu sana.
Sana kaka.
Yes. You had a lovely weekend, I presume.
I did.
Okay. Very good.
Very pleasant indeed.
Restful.
Very restful.
What details? Never keep quiet like this. They're expecting details.
All right. What I did was, why it was restful, I had some very pleasant conversations on Saturdays and Sunday and discussed. Like the conversations began a lot earlier. They began around Thursday. But they were pleasant. Some were just reminiscences.
Okay.
Others were teaching sessions that I have. And the interactions were particularly interesting.
Very good.
Because of the questions that arose from some of the teaching, some of the queries. It is always interesting when people ask questions that ordinarily, let me put it this way, they don't fall into the category of what you call normal questions. And Eric, you have new glasses.
What?
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
I picked someone else's glasses.
Maybe you did, but you have new glasses. So it's interesting when you have, should you say, a new perspective on a discussion that you probably had before, and new ideas flowing, and people who ordinarily you don't meet and you don't talk to also have something to say. It makes for interesting conversation.
Nice.
Get your mind thinking. So that is what I consider restful. Yes.
Nice. Benson Kiplangat is very happy that you're on air this morning. 10 hours ago, he was missing you. Said, Kwanza, he misses your voice. And every day is proverb. Waking up at 5:50 to wait for the morning situation room. Can't wait to hear you guys kesho. So say hello to Benson.
Benson, how are you? And thank you very much for those very kind words.
Yes. Ndu,
Yes.
how are you? How was yours?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Super.
Yep. We'll have interesting conversations to have today. It was Jamhuri Day on Saturday. This time, the stadium was not filled to the brim. There was a lot of effort taken to ensure there is social and physical distancing in Nyayo National Stadium. And also, across the country, there were no other celebrations. The only celebrations were the celebrations in Nairobi. So this time, the government made an effort to make it a bit different from what they did on Mashujaa Day.
Okay.
The president made his speech, of course, and you know what he said. He said very many things of what they have done, and he said, fellow Kenyans, you cannot look to the future without looking to the past. He said, the past is what has taught us that we need to have an expanded executive, and among other things. We'll have that conversation today. See, it's a big headline this morning. Whoever is set to benefit from this whole BBI story and the BBI conversation. And lest we forget, clinical officers and nurses are still on strike. And it's 7 days since the doctors suspended their strike. 7 days to go until they go on strike, if they don't strike a deal with the government. So that is still happening. And we have visitors in the country. Last week we were hosting the Ethiopian Prime Minister. Today we are hosting the Somaliland President.
Yeah.
We're doing very well as a country. I mean, we are peace-loving.
Right. Courting
Peace.
Relationship with our neighbors.
Yes.
Okay. It's a good thing, no?
Yep.
All right.
But let's look at COVID.
We should look at COVID. The talk over the last couple of days has been around vaccines. We are looking at this week, the Pfizer vaccine will begin in terms of administering in the United States. The Moderna vaccine will also begin in the United Kingdom. And so this is going to happen. And they're going to start with the vulnerable groups. Vulnerable groups is that they're going into nursing homes and old people's homes and all the frontline staff. So all healthcare workers in the United States and in the United Kingdom, will get the vaccine first. And then from there, they've looked at this in a phased plan in terms of rollout. After that, then they're going to go to young people, and then they will go to children. And the last set of people then that will be vaccinated, I mean, and it's interesting because they follow the same path. The last group of people will be healthy adults. So they're going to go older people, more vulnerable, those with pre-existing conditions will not get the vaccine actually, because they do not know if there will be any kind of reaction with them. They're just going to wait it out and see what they can do. But as they go through this, then they will be the second to last to get this vaccine, and then they will end with healthy adults. All right. So all healthcare workers will be the first to get it.
This is in America.
Yes. All healthcare workers and all of those in nursing homes or old people's homes will get the vaccine first.
So why is it that with all that big fanfare of the announcement that Pfizer have, come up with this very efficacious vaccine, why is it taken so long to roll it out in America?
I don't know.
Look, the Chinese vaccine is even being used in Morocco. The UK have gone ahead with theirs.
Well, according to them, they wanted to make sure that they could use it and it would be safe and all of this. There's a lot of rollout. I think we saw pictures over the weekend of the storage and making sure that they do this just right. We saw different hospitals across the country talk about now making sure that they have their storage facilities just right, because even for them, forget about here, even for them, they have to make sure that it's at minus 74 degrees, right? And that's the storage. They're using a lot of dry ice. All of this has to be brought into play for those who don't have facilities that can store below 70 degrees, etc., etc. So the facilities to which it's being delivered have to make sure that they are ready and prepared. And this is what was taking place over the weekend. So you're seeing today, tomorrow, vaccinations will start and they'll start administering it. Right?
You see, there's vaccine politics as well. Remember that they are likely to go for a vaccine that has been developed within their borders.
Yeah.
All right? The vaccine that you're speaking about is one of the 3 vaccines that have been produced in the West. And it is the most difficult one in terms of storage. Minus 70 degrees is tricky.
It is. That's why you see now using they're using all the dry ice and all of this, because to
Even
have facilities
transporting
that
it,
have it is a problem.
everything about it is complicated, essentially. And then remember, the FDA have to give a clean bill of health. The question is, have they? Remember, one of the things that these regulatory bodies do, they want to look at all your research. They have committees and they have groups that look into this thing. They want to ensure that the reporting on the findings are exactly as they should be. They are not going to give an okay for any drug to be used right across the country until they have crossed every T. They will not.
And this is now when Trump was able to make that. He made this announcement, and that was after all the FDA approvals that they were looking to get, that they had gotten, which is then now when he made the announcement Friday that, we're going to go ahead with this because, everything now had been done.
Now we're good to go.
Yep.
Okay.
And they're saying that this would then provide some kind of help with what they're seeing now. We're looking at almost 17 million cases in the United States, well over 300,000 deaths. And they're looking at this, to be able to at least curb the spread, going into one of the coldest years that they would experience in the last 5, and then inviting flu season thereafter. So they're hoping that this will help in one way or another.
But remember, this is the land of the free. There are people who, for whatever reason, personal beliefs, religious beliefs, do not believe in vaccines.
Yep.
There's already the debate to vaccinate or not. It's already happening in the US as we speak. And interestingly enough, it's coming from a lot of celebrities who are asking, okay, so this is out here, guys. You can actually go into your local hospital or your health facility and get this vaccine. So it's been put out there, and there are polls amongst people who are now saying, okay, guys, how safe is this thing to vaccinate or not? If you're healthy, if you've been healthy all through this COVID-19 period, what's the use of going to get one? Just maintain the measurements, or rather measures that you have been over the last 9 months, and you should be fine. So yeah, the debate is already gaining traction in terms of what are people going to do? Are people actually going to go and get this vaccine?
And what are their rights? And is the government going to impede on their rights? And then there's the brigade of individuals who are given not just to propaganda, but are given to conspiracy theories, all right, about vaccines and what vaccines are supposed to do. The QAnon group who believe that anything that has to do with COVID, and there's a whole conspiracy around it. In short, anything that you thought had been in the closet is now out. Okay? Because if you want to understand the results of what President Trump has been doing all these years, it's going to play out now. You have a vaccine, you've been told it works, but everything that has been playing out now plays out now with the vaccine. It is now available. Will you take it? It is your right to refuse.
Yep.
It is. This debate is going to rage, and as it rages on, people are going to die.
Yes, that's true. It will be very interesting. Maybe we can do this tomorrow. Look at what a country like Australia is going to do now with vaccines, because Australia has some of the most vibrant, I don't even know how, or robust anti-vaxxers on the planet. So it would be interesting to see if they're going to agree to take the vaccine, with what they've been fighting over the last 10 years when it comes to vaccines for things like polio and flu and other things, So look into those details today and bring out information tomorrow, because they for sure will not take this one lying down.
If we're going to look into this, then we'll look into also the vaccine with relation to Africa. Given the costs that we've already declared we cannot afford it, what are we going to do? And with the conditions that require for it to be safely administered, how is a country like Kenya going to be able to ensure that if we get a freebie on, say, the minus 70 degrees, or whichever it is, are we going to have a big field hospital, say, in Mombasa, where people travel to Mombasa to get vaccinated? Are we going to, yes, what are we going to do? Because just the process of transporting the vaccine is going to be a nightmare. Then there's a question of when it gets here. How do we know some unscrupulous person has not planned to sell it to somebody else? They are all, yes. In this country, that question has to be asked.
Of course. I told you guys, the earliest we are going to expect to have vaccine being readily available to the population in the country, 2015.
2015 was about 5 years ago.
No, 2025.
Oh, okay.
That's why I didn't comment.
Okay.
25.
I knew it was one of these arithmetic mornings.
Yes.
Where you just leave out
Taking
10.
us back,
Just leave out
like what we're normally
10
talking
and
about,
then
25.
as we spoke about later on.
I understood him very well because, yes.
25. To be able to say
But they
that,
said June now,
Which June?
2021.
It's possible that June 2021 there'll be a vaccine that's available in the country. That's very possible. But available to whom? I'm talking about readily available. Where
Like the way you can take your child right now and walk
yes.
into a facility and get
BCG.
your vaccination
Yes.
for meningitis.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's not just going to be available right yet.
Until local 2025 passed, we will still continue being very, very highly exposed to this virus.
Well, it looks like what the European Union told us they would do is now on the line. I want to observe. And I'm keenly watching what is happening in Brussels.
Yeah,
what's
that
happening in
they're
the
going
West.
to be to make sure that there is
Yes,
vaccine democracy.
That is what was said.
They
Vaccine
said that they were
democracy.
going to help you.
Vaccine democracy will be there, yes. But the numbers, they'll say, for X number of doses available to this first world countries, you'll have X number of doses available to the third world countries. And then now, they're available to you. And then now you have your own issues. You can't store it, you can't transport it, you can't, all those things. See, that's not Europe to do it. They've just said, you have access to this quota. Come and get it. Yeah, if you can't go and get it, don't blame us.
If you want to come and take it, I'm not going to bring it to you
Yeah,
or facilitate
you
for you
come
to
and
have it.
get
Forget
it.
it.
It's 6:15. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. Good morning, wherever you are. We're live streaming on Spice FM, KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Say hello to us, and we will be saying hello to you shortly before we take a look at the headlines. Good morning.
Spice FM, Nyeri. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
He Krisi tukiwapea mtawezana? Star Times brings you the FKF Premier League. Hii ligi ni yetu, twende nayo. You can also enjoy the Europa League, La Liga and FA Cup. To enjoy, simply get a satellite dish for only 2,699 shillings and aerial decoder for only 1,499 shillings and watch the FKF Premier League live and in HD exclusively on BTV channel 172 and 463. Recharge for 2 months and get upgraded for 2 months or call 0719 077 000.
The weather with Spice FM.
All right, let's take a look into Nairobi this Monday morning, where it's partly cloudy at 17 degrees. We're going to go to highs of 26 today. A slight chance of rain, but not likely, at least for this afternoon. 12 degrees and clear in Nakuru this morning at the moment, going to highs of 27. It's partly cloudy in Nyeri at 10. It's going to brighten up later, going to highs of 26. 9 in Eldoret this morning. It's pretty chilly today. Clear conditions, however, will go to highs of 24. 29 will be the high in Kisumu today at 19. Currently, partly cloudy conditions. It's partly cloudy in Kakamega at 19, going to highs of 31. Light rain in Mombasa, 25 degrees, going to high of 30. Come back down to lows of 25 and a 50% chance of rain. Looking quite dry throughout Malindi today, 19 degrees, highs of 30 and lows of 16. Stepping out of Kenya, it's in Kampala, mostly clear at 16. We'll go to highs of 26. Clear conditions in Dar es Salaam at 27. Go to highs of 31 and come down to lows of 26. Clear conditions in Johannesburg at 18. Highs of 24 and lows of 16. Lagos is clear at 24. Highs of 31 and lows of 24. Kinshasa this morning is raining at 24. We'll see highs of 32 today. It'll get quite warm. Already starting on a very cold note. Well, they're not starting. Going into the afternoon in Beijing at -5. It's going to get bitingly cold and go down to lows of -9. The warmest will be -1. 9 degrees and mostly cloudy in Paris. Going to highs of 11. Coming back down to lows of 9. Slightly warmer in London at 13 degrees and mostly cloudy. Going to highs of just 13. And it's Sunday night in New York at 9. Going to highs of 15 and coming back down to lows of 2.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Who's online?
Shurage just wanted us to remind you guys, just like I said, that the 12 days of Christmas start from the 25th of December to the 6th of January. All right, so it all ends on Epiphany Sunday, which is the first Sunday after Advent, if you're following either in the Catholic Church or in the Anglican Church. Okay? So the period that we are currently in is Advent. Good morning, Shurage. He is on the commuter train headed to Nairobi from Ruiru. Okay? Reagan Hanskel Nyandinga Jr. is tuned in this morning as well. Jacinta Kimweli is tuned in from Bahrain. You know where Bahrain is?
It's in Bungoma.
Oh, it's somewhere there, right? It's in Bungoma, where we will be visiting in 2015.
Bahrain.
We will be visiting in 2015.
In addition to the Bahrain, the Middle East is another one in Bungoma.
Yes, according to Eric.
Okay, fine.
Don't worry. It's okay. It's Christmas. Anything can happen. You've heard of Christmas miracles. This is one of them. Ainley Steve says, good morning, guys. Can't wait to enjoy today's conversation. Tuned in from Masinga Dam today. That's Lawrence Carrier. And Titus Umbeta says, good morning. Harold Oyoto is feeling cold in South Sea this morning and is waiting for discussions to cheer him up. Stephen Otieno is tuned in from Nyalunya in Kisumu, listening with his wife, Amani Abayo. Good morning to you guys. And Alex Mbogo is tuned in from Nyeri. Nusp Mercury, good morning, is tuned in from Kathmandu.
Okay.
It's not in Kisi. George Ochola says,
Kathmandu is next to Kathiani.
okay.
Just down here.
Kenya is not the world and the world is not Kenya. Okay. Lesandro Matthew.
Did we ask Eric how his
Kathmandu,
We didn't-
Kathiani,
that's the problem.
Did we ask Eric how his weekend
are the
was?
same.
We should have asked him how his weekend
Because
was. I think that's the
there are
problem.
manifestations of how the weekend went, and it's spilling over to Monday. But nonetheless, carry
The
on.
world is my oyster.
Apparently. Make some pearls
The
while
man
we're at
even
it.
has an oyster. Okay, carry on.
Shikuku Francis is tuned in and says good morning as well. And people seem to be in the Christmas mood this morning. Titus Mbeta, Umwana Engo, and Ronnie Reagan. Pamela Mgoy is tuned in and says, Mimi Penda Nyinyi Sana.
Chisi penda wewe pia.
And Edward Mushiri is already singing Jingle Bells. Vincent says, mark me present this morning from County 047. Good morning, guys.
Which one is 047?
Mombasa. Of course, it's Nairobi. Get out of here. You think I was gonna? Now that you're saying Kiviani and Kathmandu,
Kaviani, Kathonzweni, Kathmandu.
I was
Those
waiting.
are in the same county.
I was waiting for Eric to tell us that County 047
Over
is Mombasa.
Kathmandu.
It's Christmas. Even Spice FM
Do you
is
say
celebrating.
Kathmandu?
Eh?
Kathmandu.
Now you,
Tioba.
Nessa.
Yeah. If you've been to Kathonzweni, you should know.
I've been to Matu.
You know, Eric, maybe after the show you can share with me the experiences you've gone through, because clearly this morning you're speaking in tongues.
Kabisa.
I think there was definitely an experience.
There was an experience. I wanted to be able to get my geography mixed up like you.
I'm telling you. And yes,
Yes, I really want that.
it's the new glasses. You're seeing through a different lens.
You know.
No, maybe,
You
maybe the
know.
glasses come with a hearing aid.
3D.
3D.
See things differently. A new light. Today's Proverb City.
Yes, I knew you were going to ask that question, and I was ready for you. When a man is stung by a bee, he does not destroy all beehives.
When a man is stung by a bee, he doesn't destroy all beehives.
Yes, this is a Kenyan proverb. Doesn't indicate from where, but clearly it's a place where you have bees, and you have a place where people have been stung by bees.
Kabisa.
And the observation was that they didn't always destroy all the beehives because they understood that there are benefits, quite aside from the sting.
That
But
is it.
that is what we're going to be looking at later.
That's in Katumani.
Oh, wow.
See?
Yeah. It's I see you.
Which is next to Kathiani, which on the left, if you turn immediately right
It's
after the left,
It's
Opposite the
Kathmandu.
is
bakery.
Kathmandu. See?
It's
Yes.
Kathmandu.
No, not Kathmandu. Kathmandu.
Oh, sorry. Ndu is the operative word here.
Yes. Let's take a look at the headlines this morning. Where do you want to start?
Let's do that and look at what drives a mother to sell her own child. Unfortunately, here is a follow-up to this particular story that we saw a couple of months ago that came from the BBC. Last month, BBC Africa Eye exposed Nairobi's black market trade in babies. Today, we look at the women who sold their children for 10,000 shillings. This story was done by The Standard and BBC Africa Eye together. And it's going through and looking at really what has happened here. So looking at this now from the side of the mother, Adama arrived in Nairobi and was selling watermelon after having given birth in the village and could not keep up with the demands of a young child, and after being raised by her grandmother. Grandmother then asked her to go to Nairobi, and she agreed also to go to Nairobi to find work, and left her 18-month-old daughter in the hands of her grandma. Coming into Nairobi, it was difficult to find work. She sold in the streets for some time, worked in construction where she was paid next to nothing, and then worked at a nightclub where she earned a little money and then sent it home to her grandma for the upkeep of her child. She then started to take some more money and to keep for herself and then send some back home. She then ran into a gentleman with whom she got pregnant and then was ready to have another child. But when she had gotten into 5 months of her pregnancy, this young man stood up one day and never came back. So she was left again then with having to care for herself and realized, I am not able to do this on my own. She was pregnant, remember. And then she ran into a lady, smartly dressed Auma, who offered her 100 shillings to come into her makeshift clinic a few days after that to give birth. She did, and there were complications with the pregnancy, and Auma gave her her baby and told her to find herself a hospital. She went, had her baby taken care of, and then she gave birth to a baby boy. Weeks later, she met Auma again, who offered her another 100 shillings and immediately sent a text to someone to let them know that there was a package available now for 45,000 shillings. What she was offering Auma for her baby was 10,000 shillings. Unbeknownst to her, the individuals who were coming to buy the baby was the team from BBC Africa Eye. And when they came into the room, they had a conversation with her about basically what this was about. Auma went away with her baby and declined to sell her baby for this amount. The funny thing about this story is that this lady who's selling these babies still operating in her business. Like I told you guys, there's no way that this information will be out in the open and people do not know who the individuals are who are doing this. Auma is still operating her business, still has this clinic where there are,
Where this trade
terrible
takes place.
this trade takes place, but then terrible conditions in terms of a sterile environment with which women can give birth. But the thing about this is that there are very many women who are in a precarious situation where they cannot afford to take care of a child and they're pregnant. So beyond just selling the children, what Auma is doing is that she's birthing babies in this makeshift clinic, and then right there, offering these women something, they take off, and she now gets these
Takes care of the baby.
quote unquote takes care of the baby, gets the money, and gives them into the hands of a willing buyer. So it's still going on. A month after this had happened, this is still happening, and the question is now the desperation of some mothers, not necessarily because they need money, but because they can't afford to take care of a child that they have.
So basically, you're not getting pregnant to give birth so that you can sell this child. It's circumstances that have led you to get pregnant, and then circumstances are then now forcing you to say, maybe if this child went to another home, they'd have a better life.
Exactly. So it's
But
not that you're
if-
looking for money. It comes with the territory, but it's because you can't afford to take care of the child. And then now these groups, these syndicates, right, are taking advantage of that because they know that that is the reality on the ground. I mean, and it's also giving figures where we talked about 11,700 teenage pregnancies in Kenya this year. And we talked then said maybe it's because of COVID. But guess what? Last year, before COVID, there were 11,400. So, I mean, you're looking at a slight increase in the same period of time, but it's a problem whereby there are young women getting pregnant, and for certain things, societal stigma, not quite sure what their parents are going to say, and then those who cannot afford a child are the ones now who are stuck in this web. And people like Auma know this, and they're offering little money for these children.
They're meeting
and
a
on the
need.
other side, exactly, and on the other side, they know that there are quite a number of couples, single people, who are looking for these children.
Eric, you are right. They are meeting a need.
They are meeting a need. There are couples who are looking for these children.
Not only that,
and they're ready to pay for it.
There are young people who are pregnant. They would not know what to do with the child.
Yep.
And even if they did, what they are not able to do is to ascertain that they'll be able to look after the child. Put it this way, a child is the one thing they don't need in their lives at that particular point in time. So, because many of them also didn't plan to get pregnant. And then they are pregnant. And sometimes by the time one gets to the point where they're about to deliver, as has been painted, they had a partner who had shown an interest in taking care of her and the baby. The fellow balls at some point. Or they may have sought to terminate the pregnancy but were not able to find a way. Meaning it is a myriad of things conspiring to bring this particular individual to the presence of someone like Auma. When somebody has a problem, they look for a solution, and somebody must have told them, there's a lady who can help you with this.
Yeah.
And so they go to that particular.
So you come here, you give birth. She basically has like midwives. So it's just a midwifery clinic.
Oh, she does it herself.
Yep. And you get a baby, and somebody else is desperately looking to have a baby.
But look at it. If things go awry, she sends you to hospital. You go sort out yourself in hospital because she's obviously not able to take care of any kind of complications.
Yep.
You get well, you come back, and she continues with the process.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a big conversation anyway. Let's take a break here at 6:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. The weak link in thriving baby sales syndicate revealed. That's page 2 and 3 of the Standard this morning. Is what we've just been looking at. We'll look at more headlines in the coming minutes. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
It has been a tough year for your business, hasn't it? But you hung in there. You pressed on. You persevered. And now it's time to rise up. It's time to get ready, to get going, to get selling. And Google is here to help you rise up. Get free training and tools to help your businesses adapt and grow online. Visit g.co/Grow Africa to start now.
Next week on The Great Kenyan Bake Off.
Thank you, thank you, thank
It's
you.
the final.
All right, let's do this.
My hands are not shaking right now.
Hopefully, nothing goes wrong today.
Our last 3 intrepid bakers will have to bring out their absolute A
You
game.
ready for some smoke?
Watch as they
Ooh.
battle it out in a technical that really challenges their skills and a showstopper that will push their creativity to the limit. Don't miss the drama as we find out who will be crowned Kenya's next top amateur baker.
And the winner is...
The Great Kenyan Bake Off, brought to you by Unga Limited, inspiring a nation to bake.
Spice FM, Malindi.
Hasn't started to look crazy just yet. It is a Monday morning and people getting off of the dregs of the weekend. Kijabe coming into Nairobi yesterday was an absolute mess, and it looks like people are trying to rest from that one. Mombasa Road is building up ever so slowly, and that's between the SGR and then moving out towards General Motors. Not too crazy just yet. Probably getting into those weeks where traffic reduces quite significantly, but we will have a look at that as the minutes tick by. Around about 6:30, there's traffic building up also right around the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, heading then towards Uhuru Highway. After that, it looks pretty A-okay. Coming out of Westlands, going towards the roundabout at the University Way, that also doesn't look so bad. Also coming into the CBD, it's okay. Not too bad now. Eastern and Southern bypasses cruising along just fine. We'll take a look and see what that looks like in about half hour or so. You run into something we should know? Don't hesitate to let us know. Spice FM, KE on Twitter, or text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
27 to 7 places. More and more headlines. CT, what are you looking at?
You know, I'm actually spoiled for choice here. I'm not certain what it is that I should actually want to discuss. But let me just read the headline of the Business Daily. Banks accuse CBK of controlling loan rates. Very simply, commercial banks are accusing the Central Bank of Kenya of capping lending rates after blocking their bid to raise the cost of loans despite Kenya having scrapped legal controls of credit charges on November 7th, 2019.
They accuse them of controlling. But they control now.
Not only that, one of the functions of the central bank is precisely that.
To control.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So are you accusing me of my job?
Usually when such discussions arise, what we read in the headlines and the story that we're told is but a bit of the story. Remember, our banks, have you heard of a single bank closing in Kenya ever since COVID struck? No. What you've heard is reduced profits. Have you heard of banks?
And layoffs.
Yes, that you've heard of. Have you heard of banks posting net losses, making no money at all? What you've heard of is banks who are owed a lot of money, that we've heard of. People who
Default?
who have defaulted. This we've heard of. The question that I sometimes wonder is, when banks experience these things, and from their line of work, I can understand, because when you have an entire portfolio of non-performing loans, all right, it's for a reason, because they were performing. For them to be non-performing,
At some point they were
yes,
performing.
and you may, according to them, and we've heard, they've put in place measures to accommodate those who had borrowed. Maybe those measures were useful at a certain point in time, hoping that when things improve, they might get better, and things haven't improved. If your default rate isn't getting better in that more people are paying, then instead of going to the central bank crying, maybe you need to ask yourself what else you need to do in order to get these people of yours to pay. Because sometimes it's not that they can't pay you what you agreed they should pay.
There's something that's happening between the regulator and the financial sector. If you look at a couple of headlines that have been in the Business Daily for the last, let's say, 2-3 weeks.
Yes.
Even opinion pieces where, for example, there was an opinion piece last week that I saw which was talking about the central bank and how the shilling is performing in the market, and this particular opinion piece was alleging that there's the emergence of another, second market for forex. Basically, just talking about a black market without calling it a black market. That there's an emergence of a black market in the for forex. There's something that's happening with regards to a conversation around the central bank and the central bank's management of the fiscal policy in the country. Maybe that's something that should actually even be interrogated.
Yes, it should be. But also,
who is pushing a narrative? Is there a narrative being pushed? Is there something that is actually worth a conversation?
The rate that they're talking about, there's the benchmark that the central bank sets when it comes, because the central bank also lends money to banks. But what the banks are given are usually 4% above that bank rate. That's what currently exists in this country. Now, if you listen to this argument and everything around it, you're getting the impression that, well, the impression I get and the question that comes to my mind is, are banks seeking to have a situation where they're doing business as they usually did in the past and anticipating the sort of monies that they have made in the past, and that they haven't quite adjusted to the reality of the times in which we are living in, because it's uncomfortable in a sense. If you're used to making a certain amount of money, making certain bonuses, and then all of a sudden that isn't forthcoming, it is cause for, should we say, concern.
Yeah, but you can clearly see what's happening in the market. That's what's going to happen. I mean, anyway.
Let me say this. Last year, the central bank did warn banks and said, look, this reverting back to these, what they call punitive interest rates of more than 20%, which was previously the case, may not necessarily help your case. Because all it does, it raises the cost of doing business with you.
Yep.
And also, it means that if you are owed money, what then happens is that if in the event of a default, what is owed will continue rising at an alarming rate.
Yep.
And all it does is it puts the banks in this unenviable position where you have somebody who's simply not going to be able to pay you. How useful is that?
Okay. So medics are not happy with the president.
Really?
This is the nurses and clinical officers who are currently on strike. They are not happy. They are wondering. So we sat there, we looked and watched the president speak on Saturday at Jamhuri Day celebrations. He looked back and said all those things that he said, but not once, not in any way did he acknowledge or recognize the fact that we are on strike. Not in any way did the president come out to say, yeah, we understand that doctors and medical workers are on strike and they have grievances that they are raising, and this is what we are going to do as a government. Not a single sentence. The most the president did was talk about, we acknowledge the healthcare workers, thanking the workers for the selflessness on the front line. This is what the president said. I will never tire of thanking our healthcare workers for their dedication and selflessness amid the greatest public health challenge of the modern era. Their professionalism, excellence, unfailing commitment to their sacred oath, and their sacrifices must be reciprocated by Kenyans acting responsibly amid the COVID-19 pandemic. That was it. That today there are Kenyans who are going to seek healthcare and they're not accessing it. That there are healthcare workers who are at home because they want to get access to PPEs, that they want to have a conversation about their welfare. That did not feature in the president's speech. And so the medics are wondering, so now what is this?
And they have a right to wonder. They certainly have a right to wonder. I actually think that sometimes, I think, what you have to say and what you know you need to say may be at odds. Because what is required here is a solution. Okay, we're willing to go back to work, but I'm willing to do A, B, C, D. Then you talk to the Ministry of Finance and they tell you, Mr. President, we don't have that money. So then what do you tell these people?
Nothing.
Actually, what do you tell them? Because this isn't an easy situation. While you're still extolling the virtues of the BBI, which have a cost element to them, even if you don't do the arithmetic, when you're in dire straits and clearly money is being expended in something which you don't consider urgent, and yet some people consider urgent, then you feel my issue isn't being taken seriously.
Yeah.
That is the feeling.
Yeah.
But remember, when we look at this later on, when we're looking at the BBI and things around it, but the background from which these perspectives are born, unfortunately, are not going to get better with time.
They keep getting worse.
They're going to actually get worse. Because remember, even as we're having this discussion about medical, there's the issue of the university and increased fees. And right on the heels of that particular discussion, there's the issue of children going back to school in January. And January, by the way, is 17 days away.
It is.
So, and the preparation that we keep speaking of, 17 days away to January, are not in place. So, the question you want to ask yourself is, how are we going to deal with this problem?
What are we doing in terms of setting priorities? I think it's a big deal. Okay, so Uhuru holds Somaliland leader amidst tension. President Abdi's visit comes just days after Somalia kicked out Kenyan ambassador to Mogadishu and recalled its representative in Nairobi over claims of interference. President Uhuru Kenyatta is hosting his Somaliland counterpart Muse Bihi Abdi amidst worsening relations with Somalia. The visit by the leader of the self-declared country seeks to give Kenya a platform through which Nairobi can have presence in Hargeisa, as it has no diplomatic presence in Somaliland. President Abdi jetted into the country for a 3-day state visit yesterday and was received by Agriculture CS Peter Munya and Foreign Affairs Chief Administrative Secretary Ababu Namwamba.
Carry on. Try again, Ababu.
Namwamba.
Okay.
This visit comes after Somalia President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, also known as Farmer Joe, imposed restrictions on Kenyans hoping to travel to the country. At the same time, there has been a maritime dispute that saw Somalia file a case against Kenya at the International Court of Justice in 2014, which that is supposed to be heard in 2021, right? Mogadishu has accused Nairobi of meddling in its upcoming elections by allegedly putting pressure on the leader of Jubaland region, Ahmed Mohamed Islam Madobe, to pull out of a poll agreement brokered 2 months ago. Mogadishu expelled Kenya's diplomat to Somalia, Major General Lucas Tambo, and recalled his ambassador to Kenya, Mohammed Ahmed Noor Tarzan, over claims of Nairobi's continuous interference in its internal affairs. And I quote, President Kenyatta on Monday is scheduled to host the president of Somaliland for talks on mutual interests as they seek to deepen trade ties. And this is a press release by the Foreign Affairs Ministry. So according to the ministry's brief, Uhuru will be seeking stronger relations between the two countries to bolster security, economic and social interactions. And it's likely that all of these other things will come up in mention during these talks.
Okay. Farmer Joe is just forcing our hand in this, right?
So he thinks.
So it would appear.
So he thinks.
Farmer Joe has something, and the Farmer Joe administration have seen things happening between Kenya and Somalia. So now Somaliland is coming, so we're just trying to show them, okay, you know what? We don't need to deal with the Mogadishu. We can deal with Hargeisa.
Yes.
And then next will be Puntland.
Yes.
And then we see what happens. But then what is Farmer Joe also likely to do? Somebody has said, I was reading somewhere, someone saying you're likely to see Farmer Joe linking up with Abiy of Ethiopia and Eritrea's of Afwerki and deciding what they want to do with Jubaland. It's a whole regional dynamic here.
Yes.
Given that this is political play here, the question that comes to my mind is, what is he negotiating for? I remember whenever we discuss the issue of the state of Somali, the one thing that always comes to my mind is many of our Kenyans who trace their origin to Somaliland still have relatives in Somali. Just like we have very many Kenyans in the Marsabit area who belong to the Borana community who can trace their origins to Oromia. Okay? So, and then you also have an entire community of people who can trace their origins to Somaliland who are resident in Ethiopia. So, it's an interesting mix that we have here. There will always be a complaint that those who are in a country like Kenya but whose origins are in a certain part of Somalia, it will be argued they support that part of Somalia.
Yep.
They will always do that argument. And so their cases, they will argue, are listened to better than others. But again, it's politics at play. And remember, we are not. We would be having an incomplete discussion if we didn't discuss how it is our military ended up in Somalia in the first place, and what has been happening over all these years, and how it is Somalia actually got to even have somebody they can consider their own president, and how that has played out, and how the semi-autonomy of parts of Somalia, and how it is, how they function, and how that has played out. And you can't have this entire discussion without bringing in Al-Shabaab. So, it is an interesting mix, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, kabisa.
Thank you.
It's an interesting one. That's a very interesting one. So there's a story that's something has happened in Lamu, in Witu, Lamu. All right. So this zebra appears to have come out of Boni Forest, came to visit this particular village, and lived there for a while. You know what happens in
like a zebra, a real zebra. Okay.
Zebra. Okay. And it mingled very well and freely with
Not
donkeys.
not painted donkey.
No, a zebra.
Okay.
It has been living there with the donkeys for a while. Now the zebra has given birth to a zonkey.
I didn't see that one coming.
This is what happened.
You know, you deliberately left out. You deliberately left out the sexual orientation of the zebra for this final punchline, didn't you? Okay.
Yep.
So we can say the zebra found a friend.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're calling it a zebroid.
Not a Deborah.
Very cute baby. So the legs are striped. Only the legs, all right? The upper part of the body is a donkey.
By the way, there is an animal.
It has a mane.
There is an animal. There is an animal that has those features. Almost, it's called an okapi. Yes.
It has striped legs.
It's a member of the antelope zebra, not zebra, antelope family. It has striped feet, and the rest of the body. It is a good mix.
It's a good mix.
Yes, but it's almost extinct now.
Now
It's a big. It's like an eland, almost size of an eland, and you know an eland is almost size of a cow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So it's a cross between a zebra and.
There's only one?
Yeah, it gave birth to only
No,
one.
for starters.
Okay.
This is the first one. So let's see now what happens now when this zebroid mates with whichever, with a donkey.
Okay.
You know
Or
something?
he gets a brother who's a
No, this is evolutionary progress. No, and it's a wonderful thing,
And it's
isn't
okay?
it? It's
No
very okay.
issues?
mother and child are
Are
fine.
doing fine.
Mother and baby are doing well.
It's a zonkey. All right. So, all is well in the land of the animals, in the animal kingdom. Not so much amongst humans. Union faults VC's plan to lay off university workers. So there's a plan by the Vice Chancellor of Kenyatta University to lay off university workers, and the plan the plan by public universities to retrench staff has been criticized by a union, which claims corruption is the reason the institutions are broke. Kenya University Staff Union Secretary General Charles Mukwaya says universities will sacrifice thousands of innocent workers for mistakes of the vice chancellors. Mukwaya warned universities that have kickstarted the exercise to respect court orders. So we have a number of universities across the country laying off workers, citing they don't have enough funds. But now the union says the reason why is not because the wells have run dry. It's because these funds essentially have been mismanaged. Kisumu University sacked 204 staff on October 6th, and Vice Chancellor John Akama indicated that there was no cash to pay them. However, on October 21st, the staff secured court orders barring their retrenchment until the case was heard and determined. Kusu yesterday noted that following the development, the university has not paid the staffers. As a union, we demand that Kisumu University management obeys the court order and pays staff. The National Treasury had already agreed to the plan by universities to retrench staff. Some universities have bloated administration staff, and reorganizing human resources at these universities would require allocation for downsizing. And this is according to National Treasury Principal Secretary Julius Muya on the 5th of December. Egerton University, for example, has already requested for 1.5 billion shillings to aid the exercise. And Mukwaya noted that universities have aged staff and each retire an average of 100 every year. So he says, if staff retire and you retrench, what are you going to do? Yet we are talking of 100% transition. So more are coming in, some are leaving. But they're saying there's a bloated work staff. There's a bloated workforce anyway. We need to get rid of them.
retiring every year.
Yes.
From each university.
Yes, across the country.
Okay.
So there's a problem here. And they said now this staff leaving, this exercise is not about having a bloated workforce. What it is that the vice chancellors are engaged in acts of corruption and mismanagement of funds. And that is what we should be looking at as opposed to retrenching people.
Don't you think that it's a valid point, really? Remember, there's a case, there are cases that we've read very, very frequently of employees stating that indeed statutory deductions have been made, but when they've checked, say, with NHIF or NSSF,
they've not been forwarded.
Yes, and it isn't for a month or two, it's for a long period of time. Now, organizations, pension schemes exist because the employer deducts money from the employee directly. So the question is it a fund that they took the money to? Because funds that are well managed tend to have money.
Yes.
Remember, this thing about pension is a very good way of keeping money. You know why? That money sits there for a long time. It doesn't go anywhere. And as new people enter the workforce, that particular kitty just keeps increasing. Now, the numbers who retire are usually less than those who are still in employment. So if I were to speak as a layman, the question I would ask is, how then is it then a problem to pay these people? It becomes a problem if it's cumulative. One lot retires, haven't been paid. The following year, another lot retires. So the numbers just keep increasing. And the question you ask is, fine, where did that money go? Because that money was paid. And it should have been available. So why was it not available? Every time you hear of, say, LAPSET being involved in development, it is money that people have contributed. When you hear NSSF putting up a building, it's money that has been contributed. The idea is that these buildings would then generate money, which would then make it possible for this organization to pay out to those who then wanted the money that they contributed for all these years. So now, when at the end of it you're being told this money isn't readily available,
happy.
How can you be happy? Because to begin with, it isn't an enormous amount of money you're talking about. No, but it's your money.
It's your money. And you've been contributing towards it for all those years
Yes.
of your working life. And now you get into a point where you
actually want that. You need it.
that money.
Yep.
You need the money. Hey, so CJ Maraga, I remember he is supposed to be officially proceeding on leave tomorrow. And he said from Friday was his last day. His final function on Friday was opening of this particular law courts at the Kahawa Law Courts. This is the first and largest court in Kenya dedicated to counter-terrorism and other high-risk cases. So terrorism cases will no longer now be done at Milimani Law Court. They'll be taken to this particular Kahawa Law Courts, which is dedicated for that. It was built with the support of various organizations, including the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, regional office in South Africa, also with the support of UK and US governments, and among others. Very big thing that happened there.
Sure.
At the same time, Maraga has been faulted because he has handed over all functions of the Chief Justice to the Deputy. Now, some constitutional experts are arguing that under Kenyan law, when a Chief Justice retires, his or her deputy can only take over some functions of the office. Justice Maraga wrote to the DCJ stating that he has transferred all his powers to her until a substantive CJ is appointed. Some constitutional lawyers are now arguing that the Constitution and Judicial Service Act only allow the DCJ to fill in for the CJ in some capacities, but there are functions reserved for the substantive holder of the office. Victor Olao, an advocate with the experience in constitutional matters, argues that wording of Justice Maraga's letter is irrelevant as the law spells out the duties that his deputy can and cannot take on prior to the appointment of a substantive CJ.
By the way, these discussions that you normally read about our legal friends, our learned friends, they're interesting because everybody quotes some article.
Yeah.
Okay?
And everyone is, the law is clear.
Yes, and then they state an article because this article is actually it's reference to Justice Maraga, pursuant to the provisions of Article 161 2 B, both in brackets, and 163 1 in brackets B in brackets 1 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, as well as Section 5, I love this, of the Judicial Service Act. I hereby authorize you, Philomena Mbete Mwilo, the Deputy Chief Justice, to act as Chief Justice. Everyone quotes some statute or
There's
the
a
other.
law somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Ekuru Okot, he's also a lawyer. He was among the people who wrote this constitution. Says there's nothing wrong with what the CJ has done because we cannot allow a vacuum to exist. We are talking about the institution of the Chief Justice, the office itself, and not the individuals. The office has to function because it's ordinarily expected. That's why I think Justice Maraga is right in asking the DCJ to assume all the functions of the CJ. If you say that she can only perform in an acting capacity only a few functions, then who performs the other functions?
They wait until a new one is appointed.
Yeah, but in the meantime,
Those things that you ask them to fulfill certain functions then obviously will not be carried out.
By the way, this particular mix of succession is going to get even more interesting. And those who, again, comment on these issues and know more than we do say that with the election of a certain chief magistrate, Evelyn Olwande, okay, to be in the JSC, this also now complicates this mix of the succession even more. Because apparently, as would be expected in such cases, sides had been taken, lobbying was taking place, and there's a whole host of people who people feel should actually apply for this job of Chief Justice. Now, the JSC has a very important role when it comes to some of these things. So when you have someone like this, remember, she also had a contest, and she beat...
beat other contestants.
Yes, the names are still Atambo, Florence Macharia, Dolphina Lego, and Tresia Nyangena. Okay? It's interesting. They're all ladies.
Yep.
So, I think we are in for some interesting times ahead of us, don't you think? Yes. Because this is not going to end. The thing about our learned friends is they usually have a lot to say on such matters.
Oh, yeah.
And
They
everyone who has a legal mind, I'm sure will jump in with their opinion on this particular
Sure,
matter.
there'll be a lot of talk. At the end of the day, all died down when the president appointed.
Yes,
you.
but the issue here is not whoever talked about the office and the person got it right. What we're talking about here is not the office, we're talking about the person.
It's the individual.
Yes. And why the individual? Because they think the individual will determine certain leanings. I think 2022 is coming to the discussion. They should take note of what has happened in the US when Trump took the case that he had in one state to another state before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, which has a majority of people who lean towards his party, the Republican Party, they told him, no, my friend. No.
That's what we're not doing.
No,
Sorry.
that is not going to happen. Legally, no, you don't have a leg to say. And he has had very unpleasant things to say about the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Coming to the top of the hour, 30 seconds to 7 o'clock. Okay, that guy who had disappeared, the Thika trader, disappeared, came out and said he had been kidnapped. He was forced to wash
houseboy,
dishes,
yeah. Yes,
blah,
yes,
blah,
yes,
blah,
yes.
blah. He had been kidnapped. Police have said they have reviewed the CCTV of the place that he says he was kidnapped. Nothing like that. He's not even being seen in that
No
place.
man came and picked him up.
Yes, no, but that is correct. That is the definition of vanished. If they could see him, then he had
would not have
vanished.
vanished.
Yes. So if they look
He
and they
says he
can
was
see,
kidnapped by burly men.
yes, he
Two.
was. Yes,
And
he
the same
was.
two burly men released him into the forest.
Yes,
Bas.
yes.
Police are saying hakuna kitu kama hiyo tunaona. Good morning, it's 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Somebody has taken 22 minutes from Athi River to the CBD. I think it's that week where Eric said, things are not really... You're just morphing in from one day to the next. So there's not much traffic on the roads today. It's brilliant. Even Brian Obara is here. I'm telling you. So there's not much traffic on Mombasa Road today, getting to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. Then onto Huru Highway into the CBD is looking really good this morning. It's building up slightly on Thika Road around the Pangani underpass, but then it's not too bad as you get into the CBD. Wangari Maathai Road, previously Forest Road, looking very, very good as well, getting into the city centre. We don't have much traffic on the roads this morning. We're going to take a look and see what it looks like in a short while, if it actually does build up. More and more people at home now as you get into the festive season. Now, guys, we know that the roads are clear. Even a more higher indication of how more careful you should be, okay? So we don't have any accidents that we can avoid. Talk to us on SpiceFMKE on Twitter or text 40127. Let's take a look in half an hour and see how things may have changed.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start
2
your
minutes after
day.
7, this is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's The Situation Room. As we begin the hour, City, what is today's proverb?
When a man is stung by a bee, he does not destroy all beehives.
When a man is tongue.
Okay, when a person is stung by a bee, they do not destroy all beehives. Does that sound gender sensitive enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bit.
Or
it's
let's
different.
broaden it. When people are stung by bees,
When humans.
they do not then. Okay, let's be specific. When human beings are stung by bees,
Or
they
any
do-
other animal that stings.
Now that you want to, you know that thing. Remember
You've
in,
gotta be
prim-
all
in school
inclusive.
when you did mathematics and you did expansion. Now this is what you're going.
So essentially, want to bring in wasps as well.
Yeah, even wasps are included here.
Even red ants,
Red ants.
scorpion.
No, you know those red ants are insidious.
I'm telling you, it's a terrible.
I don't know
thing.
what it is about the red ants. They creep up your trouser. You never feel. Then they reach the nether areas, and then they sting.
Yeah.
Yes, they never sting your ankle. They never sting your knee. I know because I'm speaking from experience.
Experience. Okay. Ndo,
Horrible creatures.
telling you, and they're tiny.
Okay. Hivyo ndio umeamua.
Well, we started off really
Not
well
and destroy the whole
with the
ants
beehives,
nest.
and you guys decided to expand the discussion to wasps. I thought we had ended with wasps. Then you carried on to scorpions.
No, you started amending a proverb. That you went, so man, okay, people, okay, human beings. Okay.
Now that we're there,
So now that we're there, let's look at also the other animals, the other things that sting.
Which sting? Okay. All right.
Everything else.
I know what's on my mind, but I'm not going to tell you.
no,
No. By the way, I'm not throwing a sulk. I'm just telling you I'm not going to tell
And
you.
then you brought in your own story now here.
of how you went camping. Okay.
You guys, you know Christmas begins next week, eh?
I told you, after Uhuru's speech, after he gets into that limousine, Christmas begins. That's it. We're in Christmas.
By the way, was there mention about lockdowns?
Lockdown of what?
Of what?
The country. See, we still have COVID.
We have a nationwide curfew.
10 to 4.
You've forgotten that?
10 p.m. to 4 a.m.
Every
Actually,
part of this country.
you know, for me, that has been normal. It's normalized.
curfew.
So it's not, I don't
No, it had been moved 11 to 5. Then it went back a month ago from 10 to 4 a.m.
Yes, I remember that one.
So it's still there, still in place. That one at least. You don't like it?
No, it's not that I don't like it. I'm listening to you telling me this thing as though my memory went for a walk and they suddenly come back. So you're beginning to inform it.
The issue of lockdown is, the story that had appeared earlier in the papers, and the conversation was happening nationally, or the possibility of a lockdown, which made people really fear. Did you see the kind of traffic that we were seeing, snarl-ups on the roads
Last
over the
week?
weekend? This weekend.
It's terrible.
Roads to Nakuru, people were stuck for hours. They had created, you know what we do? 17 lanes.
Yes.
People coming back from Nyeri and the environs, Meru, Nyeri,
Embu,
Isiolo, all the
Wapi.
way here at Kennel.
17 lanes.
17 lanes coming back to Nairobi. 'Cause
Crazy.
This is it. We're in that season. It's already started. The only mention of what is going to happen was, of course, the president acknowledging that we are still on course to reopening schools in January, on the 4th of January, that we are still fighting COVID-19 and everybody needs to take care of that. and that we are now going into the future, and the future is bright. And the future, as he has seen it, is the BBI. Which brings us to the conversation that we want to have this hour. The Building Bridges Initiative, the signatures were already taken to the IEBC. Chairman Wafula Chebukati tried to hint that he does not have enough resources to verify all those 4.5 million signatures that were taken to him by the BBI Secretariat, but that is shauri yake. He has a constitutional job to do. He will do it, apende asipende. Then the president now was talking about what he believes is the best thing that can happen to this country to make sure that we don't fight. And this is the BBI and the proposal for an expanded executive in the BBI. This is what the president was talking about at the Nyayo National Stadium during his speech on Jamhuri Day. He said an expanded executive and constitutional recognition of the opposition will reduce the notion of political scarcity and the propensity for electoral violence every 5 years. Similarly, it will enhance the doctrine of a constitution of hope over one of fear. This is what he was saying. The headline today in the Standard is why they love BBI. And it brings in this cabal of top national leaders and why each of them loves the BBI. The promise of an expanded executive has taken the sting out of electoral defeat and created a bypass to the seat of power for top politicians. With key positions enshrined in law, it would be easier to form coalitions as well as to posture for the national interest, making the next election the first win-win contest, not for Kenyans, but for the big boys. Emphasis being mine. So, for example, we're talking about who are these people that are set to benefit. The president and what he said, an expanded executive. The ODM leader, Raila Odinga, he says, we want to see more people at the top whom we can work with at this level. People like Wycliffe, that is Oparanya, should now stop playing in the lower league. Let him come where we belong, the top. The Deputy President William Ruto, an expanded executive, offers an array of opportunities to reward allies and neutralize rivals. If he loses in the next election, he could be the leader of opposition, so he'll still have relevance. Oparanya, the chairman of the Council of Governors, two-time governor of Kakamega, just like others, he is a second-term governor. He can go for an MP seat in the next election, and then he can join the cabinet. Or he can decide to vie for the Senate and be in the Senate. He can be a deputy prime minister. Same as other two-term, second-term governors like Joho, like Alpha Mutua, like Kivuta Kibwana. Kalonzo Musyoka, 10 years in the cold, and with new rivals haunting him in Ukambani, the former vice president is eyeing a slot in the expanded executive. Musalia Mudavadi, the former vice president, BBI is the surest bet for getting back to the center of power. For him, Gideon Moi, the chairman of Kenya's oldest party, KANU, BBI offers him possibility to be president or prime minister. See, sharing of the spoils. Now tell me here how we have made sure that there is no fighting among the small communities, or how we have made sure that everybody then feels included. I keep asking, how does the Pokomo feel included if the Pokomo has been feeling excluded from top government?
You know, we've actually brought this discussion to the very apex because the thing that we often deal with when you have such a should we say, a huge lingering subject is the contextualization of it. Everything, the proponents of the BBI are fairly clear about what it is. Clear insofar as this is what we hope to achieve. The changes and what keeps going on, in my mind, those are political issues, and I will not discuss them now. But if you contextualize the BBI and you look at everything else that's happening around it, then it becomes one big hoo-ha. Start with COVID, the economic ramifications, unemployment. Talk about ramifications that carry on to provision of BBI, safety of children in schools. Just keep thinking of the things that are there. Then look at Parliament, what the emoluments towards parliamentarians are, what they keep doing in terms of giving themselves more and more perks vis-a-vis what's happening to the rest of the citizenry. Then look at this big one. We have devolved. We then have a situation where in our country, we have counties. And look at what happens within those counties. And this very idea that people are supposed to benefit because of this devolution, the thing that seems to have devolved most effectively is poverty. It has been devolved to the very basic level where you're probably poorer than you were before, and yet the idea was money comes nearest to you in the most possible way. Now, consider, if there was a time when you wanted to understand how it is that we take the cue from the leadership, it is this one. Because look at the cue that's being taken. Before, Kenyans have joked about how we devolved corruption. It is true we did. It isn't a joke. Now, imagine if the benefits which were supposed to get to the lowest possible denomination and contextualize that and remove the word development and put in corruption. Now, you tell me if corruption is devolved to the lowest possible denomination, is there going to be any development? The answer is no.
No. Is
What-
anything going to change?
Yes, things are going to get worse.
Exactly.
That's the
But now,
change.
the change that people would be seeking would be something for the better. And
Yes.
this is what you're essentially prescribing to people. What you're basically telling people is that, look, I see the situation in which we are in. I look at the reasons as to why we have been in this mess that we have been in before. And this is what I am then prescribing as a solution. And that sounds good to the ear. And anybody who is involved in any kind of psychophancy when it comes to you who is preferring this solution as a political leader, that's what carries the day. That they hear the words that you're saying. But in terms of internalizing what is a plausible solution, it's not the case. It is not the case, because if you want to look at it for what it really is, it exacerbates an already bad situation. It makes things worse. For me, I don't see it getting better. I see more poverty. I see deeper, darker lines being drawn around people who feel as though they were not ever able to be included. I see it entrenching already systemic problems that had been there before. That's what I see. But unfortunately, what comes out of the mouths of politicians is what they're hoping that the sycophants would listen to and carry the day. Truth be told. And even worse off, I see that those who are surrounding themselves, who are rather surrounding those who are speaking these things, if you probably had a one-on-one in truth with them, they would also probably tell you the same thing in truth, whether it would be in what they're convicted of, and it would be in total confidence. But to tell you the truth, it is not solving the problem. If you really wanted to solve the problem, these solutions that are being offered up right now are not the ones that you should give. It would make it much worse. It would make it much worse. But, like we said, the train has already left the station. And for anybody to come back and try to now peel it back would be saying that, you're an affront to development.
If our issue, and just like the president said the BBI has the spirit of inclusion, co-creation, and justice. And one of the things that was the hallmark of the handshake between the president and the former prime minister was, let's look at why is it that we get to such an acrimonious presidential election. Why is it? What makes it become a do or die? So one of the things that the political leaders have been saying is that it becomes a do or die because of winner takes all. Because if you lose this, you've gone round the country campaigning, you have put your all into this, and then you basically just go home into oblivion, then you've lost it. And this is what is one of the downsides of this constitution, that in the previous constitutions, you could still be something. In previous constitutions, when Raila Odinga vied for the presidency in 1997 and he lost, he was still an MP. That he wasn't, completely forgotten.
He wasn't out in the wind.
He
yes.
wasn't out in the wind. So this one, because you're fighting for this and you get nothing at all, then you feel that you must win. It's either I win or I win. And you accept to see that when you're getting into this contest, it's not a new law that is introduced after you win. Oh, by the way, now that you've won, let me tell you what happens. Or now that the results are out, so this is what happens. If you do not win, it means that you get nothing. You knew this by the time you were declaring interest in that seat. You knew that. At no point did you say that this one is not for me because I still want to be somebody next year. And the chances of me losing this are high. Or there are chances that I could lose this. And therefore, I'm not going to participate in this particular process because I stand a chance of losing. You knew the game. You get into the game. You play the game. You lose the game. You come out and say, no, it's an unfair game.
But you knew the rules getting in.
Completely from the very beginning. Our problem may not necessarily be, and I have said this before, our problem is not necessarily because of, the winner takes all or loser loses all, or that when you get in there, then you do not get the recognition. Our problem, I think, is in the values that we have of our leaders. Our problem is the kind of bad manners that our politicians have, that our politicians believe they feel entitled. This guy feels completely entitled that he must be something. This person feels that, I must get something out of this. I've invested in this. I must get something out of it. This is the game. If you get to a point where even now you have those 5 slots and you have more than 5 people who want something, there will still be an acrimonious issue emanating after an election.
There's a little detail that also muddies these particular waters. It is what we call the fairness of the, not electoral process, but the electoral outcome. Process, people going to vote. People vote. No problem there at all. They actually go and vote. And as usual, thereafter is where all this debate starts taking place. And the point that you raise is a valid one. If only the validity extended to us having a BBI, an IEBC or electoral body, which we agree on how we should actually form and everything that goes about it. But this is where the question arises, because when you think of the Electoral Commission, whatever name we give it, and you hear the discussions that arise about its functions, one of the things that people forget is that all these parties who are now involved were actually party to forming that particular commission. Like this IEBC, everybody had a say. It isn't as though it isn't like in the previous times when it's the president who decided. Remember, up until, for instance, if you want to understand, up until 1977, we didn't have a court of an appeal. The Court of Appeal was actually formed in this country in 1977. In 1975, it was okay. It was legal for the president to nullify a court ruling.
Yep.
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when this new constitution was being heralded as a wonderful thing, it was with good reason. But when I look at the changes that have been made in the constitution since we got independence, the thing that in my mind is clear is that when you've had the run of a constitution for the length of time that we've had, I don't see anything wrong in making amendments. I don't see anything wrong. Because we couldn't know how this was going to play out until we enacted it.
That's true.
So long as it was in paper, it was just, and it was perfect. You put it in to actually realize this thing isn't quite working out the way we did. Now, in my mind, again, the issue of the costs that associated with all this bloated parliament and everything that we're talking about, in my mind, it's not an issue. More parliamentarians, that's not the issue. The issue is this. That can't be the one thing that takes center stage when it comes to the discussion, when there are other things that are considered more important, like, for instance, something as simple as those who are less fortunate in our society. What are these things that we do to ensure that they don't remain in that state? But if you don't take care of it, and there's no clear indication of how you want to take care of it, and yet you're discussing a bloated parliamentary force, then that discussion will be skewed against it no matter what you do.
So that's where the problem of that amendment comes in, because when you say that you have the reason why you'd have a bloated parliament is to increase representation. Representation to what end? If you're representing people and you're not really impacting their lives.
Essentially, what is this representation that you're talking about?
You're talking about?
What is it? Just the numbers. How does it translate into changing their lives for the better?
Take a break now and take a look at the weather. 20 minutes after 7, this is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's a situation room. Shortly, we'll be taking your calls. Kariuki from Wakulima Market, you're saying you had called. We'll get back to you shortly and hear what you have to say about this. Kariuki hasn't spoken to us in a while, eh?
Yes, in fact, I remember we had suggested we should actually look for him because he'd been rather silent.
Yeah, so we'll hear from him shortly. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, at 20 minutes after 7.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The weather with Spice FM.
The sun is out in all her glory in Nairobi. It's still partly cloudy, however, in some parts of Nairobi. We'll see highs of 26 today. 11 degrees and clear in Nakuru, going to highs of 27. 26 will be the high in Nyeri today. It's clear at the moment at 11. It's still quite chilly and dropping in Eldoret this morning at 8. Mostly clear, however, going to highs of 24. 29 will be the high in Kisumu. It's partly cloudy at 19 at the moment. 19 also in Kakamega and partly cloudy, going to highs of 31 today and lows of 14. 25 will be the low in Mombasa today. It's raining at 26, going to highs of 30. Also have 30 as the high in Malindi. Currently at 19 degrees and partly cloudy, coming down to lows of 16. It's clear in Kampala at 20. Highs will be 26 and lows of 18, whereas highs will be 31 in Dar es Salaam, coming down to lows of 25. And it's partly sunny in Johannesburg this morning at 18, coming down to lows of 16 and highs of 24. 31 will be the high in Lagos today. It's mostly cloudy at 24, a chance of rain later on. Also, high chance of rain in Kinshasa. It's cloudy at 24. It go to a warm high of 32, come back down to lows of 24.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
After 0719-012-600, we are looking at the president's speech on Saturday, in which he said the way to go now is the BBI. And he says, BBI gives us this opportunity for us to make sure that we have a more inclusive co-creation of and prosperity in government. This is what it is. It's inclusion, co-creation, and justice. Do you feel that this is what the conversation that we're having countrywide now, nationally now, this is the conversation that we should be having? There's a story that has been done today in the Standard by, it's page 12. I said page 12, right? Let me just get there. Yes. By Daniel Wesangula. Daniel Wesangula says, not yet Uhuru as Kenyans hungry, still angry and lost. 57 years on, the government has turned the pandemic into an excuse to pepper over a long list of broken promises made to the public. Local leaders are advancing politics, while other countries are trying to prioritize access to COVID-19 vaccines. This is a conversation that is happening elsewhere in the world, is what are we doing about COVID, blah, 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 blah. Index country is we have done very well in terms of our healthcare system. In fact, if we look at the number of ICU beds that we had before COVID and the number of ICU beds that we have now, this is commendable. We have increased the beds. Look at the number of isolation. This was the president's speech. The isolation beds that we had earlier and the isolation beds that we have now, we have made serious, admirable progress. This was it. And then he goes now into looking at what we have now in terms of the BBI and this whole issue of inclusion, co-creation, and justice.
The president is right when he talks about those numbers are actually correct. But does he mention that those numbers actually meet the needs that we have? The answer is no, they don't. But then of what use is all this when the people who are supposed to ensure that those substantive and really definitely positive improvements actually benefit the citizenry cannot work because they have needs that haven't been met? How useful is that?
When you have a population that's crying because they're hungry, when you have a population that cannot afford to send their children to school, because let's not try to be very weepy about this, right? It's the truth.
The basic facts.
It's the fact. We're not trying to now say, okay, let's throw in some things to make this story a little bit more sensational. This is actually what is happening. When you have people, mind you, whose houses were washed away by floods a year ago and still today have no existence. We're not talking about something that happened in another country, right here, West Pokot. Today, have no existence, have no residences, have no homes, have no shelter, right? Putting up in schools, which, by the way, are opening in January. But we don't know what happened to these schools. right? Now, it's not a fairy tale or a fantasy. It is the case. And these are the same people that you want to go back and make a decision about something like this. They don't resonate with it. And what do you expect?
But even more significantly, you see, lofty ideas are good. Big plans, even better. Implementing them, excellent. But you have to again contextualize it and ask, what is it that the Mwananchi would actually be? And here the Mwananchi, you see, the times in which we live in, it isn't as though there's a constant. No. The constant here is a constantly deplorable situation evolving. People who had jobs don't have jobs. People who are able to meet their basic needs now not being able to meet, and the numbers are increasing. Now, these numbers increasing against this particular reality, you then say that the BBI is good. There is no doubt the BBI has many benefits, but there's also no doubt that we have problems that need to be addressed. And they have to be addressed now, not tomorrow, not in 2022, now. So, even against this, before we get to Christmas, what's the next plan? How are we going to address the needs that we currently have? How are they going to be met? Yes, we understand that an atmosphere of peace is necessary, and indeed, it is progress that we solve our problems by talking and shaking hands. It is true. I remember reading this article on Sunday by John Kamau about one of the first handshakes even at independence, the handshake between Jomo Kenyatta and the white settlers. He considered it a handshake, and it charted the path for people to now start living harmoniously with their former masters or former colonialists. There are those who argue that it was also a missed opportunity to bring the country together. But then, if you look at the politics that followed, the politics of opposition and those who wanted Majimbo, the coming together, changing the constitution, a lot happened over the years. A lot is still happening now. But those promises that were made at independence about the three evils that we must eradicate, you know, those problems are still with us, and they're not with us in small numbers. They're small, they're with us in greater numbers. The diseases
have been growing with our population.
Yes, they have. The diseases are with us. The people who can't get education are with us.
The ujinga.
Yes. So, and others that we hadn't anticipated are coming with us. And the constitution that we have, with its implementation, was supposed to reduce it. Yes, we formed county governments. But unfortunately, the cue that the county governments seem to have taken was to do what had previously happened and still happens at the national government.
The national level.
So the Mwananchi is still not where he was. He's worse off.
Yeah. Let's hear from Kariuki. He's on the line. Good morning, Kariuki.
Good morning to you guys. How are you?
Very well.
We're very well, thank you, Kariuki. Nice to hear from you.
Thank you.
Where have you been, Kariuki? You well?
I've been, you know, we struggle to survive, you know. Yeah, we struggle to survive. That's the reason as to why maybe I was absent for quite a long time.
Yes.
What I'm saying,
right.
City.
Yes.
I want to answer City because I have heard what he was saying, and I wish Kenyans will never go back to their pockets. I don't oppose even the creation of the Prime Minister or any other seat that have been brought forward by the current proposed constitution. But my argument is, go, Mr. City, I wish you can go to the street of near every town in this country and maybe witness whatever is happening or the kind of poverty the Kenyans are subjected to by the current constitution. Remember, the 2010 constitution was a joy to Kenyans. Remember, we have come out of the Kano government. Remember that?
Yeah.
So, we were very joyful to bring a new rearrangement of the law. But quite unfortunately, Kenyans have suffered more and more than we were before, even during the Kano government. Now, as we are talking, City, you have said, I've heard you, what you are saying. You have said Kenyans are more poor than before. And I wish Kenyans would never go back to their pocket to finance the current proposed position of power, especially the executive, broadening of the executive and the new parliamentary seats that have been created. I wish you guys can go out there and see the suffering the Kenyans are going through, even to put their food on the table.
Karaoke, can I ask you, based on what you've
Please
just
go
said,
ahead.
what you've just
Go
said
ahead.
now, so then Kenyans are not really concerned about whether you have more people in power. Kenyans are not really concerned about whether you have an expanded executive or not. Kenyans are concerned about putting food on the table, sending their children to school, making sure you have some kind of livelihood.
There you are. So, what I'm saying, I've heard the city saying that the position, the former constitution, before the current one that we're having today, the former constitution was having a position of official opposition leader. Anytime we end up any contest during an election, the opposition leader usually occupies the position of the official opposition leader. Now, what if the current proposed constitution was changed to an extent whereby there was a creation of the official opposition leader rather than creating the new expensive prime ministerial position and the new parliamentary seats that have been proposed already? If it was that, then I think Kenyans would be happy. But remember, even just a minute, please. Even by subjecting Kenyans to new position of power, in fact, it has created more and more problems in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Karaoke. 0719-012-600. What do you think? What are your views on the current state of the nation? This is where we are, 57 years on. We've just celebrated 57 years of independence as a country. Kenyans are still hungry. Kenyans angry. Karaoke is saying people are still suffering, especially this year and what has happened because of COVID-19. There has been serious effect on people's livelihoods, on people's incomes, on people's lives. Is the conversation that we should be having looking at what we need to do right now? What is it that we need to do right now to make sure that we can carry everybody across into the new year, everybody across into getting their lives back on their feet? Or is looking at how the positions can come in and we expand the executive, have extra seats. That is what is going to heal the country. That is what is going to make the country feel more cohesive. Ed Gitonga is in Nyeri, our friend. Good morning, Ed.
Hey, morning. How you doing, guys?
Good morning.
Fine, thank you, Ed.
I hope you had a nice weekend.
Yes.
We did.
We did.
Hope you had too.
Well, I'm just fatherhood and transport business. Anyway, this is the thing, huh?
Yep.
For the past, pardon I'm so poor in history because I really don't follow it, but for the 60 whatever years that we've been independent, huh?
They're 57.
57.
57.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so for the 57 years that we've been independent, things are getting worse off. And there's something, CT, that you said some time back, that overrepresentation doesn't mean development. The truth of the matter is, as Karaoke had said, what people care about right now is the fact that are there going to be more seats that are going to incur more money? Or those are the more seats, are they going to still be the same? There's no loss that the country is going to get. Because I can, as you had said earlier, Eric, the current constitution right now, ukipoteza umepoteza. And that is what the political system is trying to do, to cover up holes so that ukipoteza kuna substitute.
Yep.
But the truth is, there is no way a politician can take a seat without any money. Let me correct Karaoke on that. So, be rest assured, whatever seats are going to be put in there, they're still going to have some money being forked out. And when money goes so much on the current budget, then development doesn't grow. Actually, if there was a way, if only people put much effort in the Punguza Mzigo bill by Ekuru au Court, which was to trim the current overrepresentation, because currently we are overrepresented. That would be better. Because the cash, now look at this, it was 1.25 billion that the MPs need to give back right now, right? Now, we don't even know what else they need to give back. We don't know what else has gone through the loopholes.
Yep.
So, to be quite honest, guys, I don't think we're heading the right way. I don't think we're heading the right way. As a country, we're not heading the right way because you cannot. There's no way we are planting lemons and we're expecting tangerines and oranges. No.
Actually, you're expecting potatoes.
Potato, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Ed. Let's take a break now. 0719-012-600 is the number to call. Let's take a look at traffic, what's happening on the roads, and then we come back to the conversation.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
In the face of COVID-19, life has been adversely affected, with nearly all schools in Kenya lacking basic hand-washing facilities, affecting more than 19 million children. Together with Davis and Shatleaf and True Black, we, the Standard Group, have partnered to collectively unite other corporates and individuals to join the initiative towards setting up basic sanitation facilities around the country. For more information, send an SMS to the short code 40616 or email standwithkenya@standardmedia.co.ke. Time to come together for tomorrow. It's our future. A partnership by Davis and Shatleaf and True Black and the Standard Group.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. 87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa.
Okay, so approaching Mombasa Road from the southern bypass this morning, large goods vehicle has overturned, unfortunately, and traffic is building up. In a few minutes, Langata Road might be faster this morning than the bypass if you're trying to use that to get into the CBD. So if you're approaching the southern bypass, coming towards Mombasa Road, you need to do so with extreme caution because there is a vehicle that has overturned. It's right smack dab in the middle of the road, and that is affecting traffic. Very few vehicles be able to get past that one. Everywhere else, though, traffic looks fantastic all the way from town towards Mombasa Road, and then Mombasa Road outbound as well. It's looking very good today. So Mombasa Road, we're not frowning at you in any way whatsoever. Southern bypass, however, we are not happy this morning. Eastern bypass looking pretty good. Let's look at it through the day.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Okay, when does it seem clearly the government's priorities are not in touch with the realities on the ground? Will the BBI solve the current medical crisis, the unemployment, or the high cost of living? Kenyans, we are on our own. Tujipange. More comments?
Okay, so Reagan says, Kenya not yet Uhuru. The proposed bill is just for a few individuals and nothing to smile about. Prince Darling Karewa says, maybe because the government can't give Kenyans more than that. That's why they're not offering more. We can't give more than, or rather, you can't give what you don't have. Julia Kagitugu says, when all else fails, there's always delusion, and BBI is a delusion. Asem Sami says, that's a sugar-coated document outside with bitter innings. Harold Ayodo says, definitely, we need BBI like yesterday. The expanded executive that many are allegedly complaining of will sort a lot of our several ethnic issues every election. Remember, we have a new tribe, the Shona.
Now we are 45. So divide by 5. So every seat will be representing like 7 or so. 9 or so. 9 or so, right?
We have a new tribe indeed. As though we invented it, huh?
Yeah, we came up with it.
Now we've formally, officially recognized the 45th tribe in Kenya. When you listen to the president's speech on Saturday, he talked about very many things. He looked at, where we've come from as a country, where we are heading as a country, the things that have happened, the fight against COVID. He recognized that we have a situation in the country, COVID. We recognize that now We also have a political situation, and that's why the BBI is in place. Do you feel like the president was speaking as a man who's in touch with what's happening? When Kariuki says, go around the country and see the kind of suffering that people are having. Did the president talk to someone like Kariuki and the others who are feeling, there's a lot that's happening right now, and this is our priorities? Did the president talk to the doctors who are, and the clinical officers and the nurses and the lab technicians and everybody else who works in the healthcare system right now, who are just feeling, there's the issue of just getting access to PPEs. We don't have access to PPEs. We need to be taken care of better. Did the president address those? When the president declared that schools must reopen on the 4th of January, and in fact ordered and directed the provincial administration officers, not provincial, but NGAOs, the national government administration officers, to make sure that this happens, did he address what the people may be feeling?
No.
I want to take my child back to school, but I don't have. They require school fees. They need uniform. There's a lot that's needed around this. There's transport money that will be required if your child was in one area and they need to go back to school in another area. All those. How do you make the people feel that yes, when the president is speaking, he's telling us we are together in this. We are gonna overcome. We will be together, despite everything else that's happening around us. We are going to be. Call out the resilient spirit of Kenyans.
You know what? I think there was a build-up to when he spoke about where we are coming from, very important, but then where Kenya is going as also very important. For me, it provided a perfect opportunity for him then to bring in the BBI conversation, and that be the thing that was then going to lead to these many solutions that are being looked for, right? It was, if anything, a build-up to that. Now, unfortunately, Kenyans have been given the impression, it could be the reality if you want to look at it like that, CT, it could be the reality that these things that I am directing that are going to get us towards our future, right, spur the economy, get back, is for you Kenyans to figure out how you're going to do it. I have said schools open. Forget this business of creating or providing a conducive environment through which these things can occur. You figure it out. You don't have school fees? Okay, yeah, well, we know. Figure it out. Doctors, nurses, clinical officers on strike or going on strike because there are certain things that have not been provided for them, which, by the way, is your job as the government. Figure it out, right? And then saying what we're essentially going to do, because it sounded like a warning that if children are not in school for whatever reason, GAOs are going to make sure that they're in school, whether by force or fury or what, they're going to be in school. The conversation about them not having the resources to enable them to do this never came into play. The conversation that medical workers don't have what they need to do their job, to provide medical services, never came into being. So again, it does seem as though there's a top layer approach to everything once again, that this is where we are going. The very few of you who are going on this train, by the way, this is where we are going. The rest of you, we want you to join us and fight us and say we as Kenya. However, how you're going to get there? That's
Find your
problem.
way.
We are already on the train. How you're going to facilitate to join so that we can all say we have this resilient spirit as Kenyans is up to you. Has he had a conversation? No, don't even go far. Don't even go to the slums. Don't even go to the shanty towns and talk to people. Talk to your colleague, the one that you see every day, and talk about their existence in a very difficult world today. Before you even go far, the person next to you. And this is not luxury that we are talking about. This is the very basics for which a government is supposed to provide.
You know, there are things that people say, and in their simplicity, the enormity or the weight that it carries may not be seen. And one Eric Latif has on many occasions come up with something that seems simple and yet it gets to the heart of the matter when he has said the truth. You see, the truth is that the government doesn't often communicate very well what it is it's planning to do. It says things, but when I say communicate very well, I mean it could be explained better details could be given. It doesn't. So what it does, it leaves room for you to conjure up what it is and how it is you want to read it. Then there's the truth about exactly where we are. Then there's the truth about those who advise the president. Then there's the truth about the presidency and the complications of the presidency. Now, as a citizen, I don't really want to know how complicated it is. That's not my problem. That's not my business. My business is provision of services which the presidency has been promising And that's what is promised. And that's what they said they were going to do when they got into power.
Yep.
And which promises I see with consistency are not being fulfilled. Now, there may be things in place that the government has set in motion. We don't know about it. Truth, we don't know. Truth, they may be there, but if we don't know it, then in our minds, it doesn't exist. Truth.
If we can't feel it,
then where is it? And at what point will we start feeling it and seeing it? Then there is the reality of the borrowing that we've been doing, the astronomical borrowing that we've been involved in, 2 billion shillings daily for quite some time. Billion still confuses me. So when we are borrowing it daily, then I have to multiply it by 30. It is mind-boggling and confusing completely. We do not have evidence of where all that money has gone. It's called catch-up time. The reality of whatever decisions and process the government has been going through since it came into power, the reality and the catching up, the collision is taking place now.
No.
And we're now asking, fine, you've told us to give you time, we've given you time. You've told us to listen to you, we have listened. You have made promises, you have said, ranging from stadiums to water to whatever it is you want to say. And the promises have been made to various arms of government. You've made promises to doctors, to teachers, to nurses, to clinical. You have made promises and promises. Crunch time. Here we are. Here we are.
it catches up with you now.
It is here. Now we're saying, okay, tell us, what are we going to do?
No, the future is bright, CT. We are going to have peace in future. We're going to expand this.
It is positive that we solve our problems by talking and shaking hands. I like it, and I thank the Almighty on my knees.
Let's hear Paul first, because
Yes.
he just called in. Paul is in Mombasa. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning to you guys.
Good morning.
How is Nairobi?
It's all right.
Nairobi is all right. Mombasa mwambaje?
Tumeanza na jua polepole. I wish I could donate some to you guys.
No. you keep your son.
Okay. Probably he also tell me next time to keep our ocean.
Oh, yes. Maji ya chumvi hayo. Hatukunywi chumvi.
So it's a good discussion today.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know what the solution to the country is actually, because I'm looking at it in a way that all the 47 counties are devolved, and they were given all the powers equally and the resources almost equally, probably not equal as it may be. But with the same constitution, with the same everything. But those county governments that have really done a lot with the resources they were given.
Yep.
There are those the counties that have done zero. You go there and wonder even whether there is a county government or anything. To me, I mean, with the constitution being good or bad, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the implementation and workability of our constitution. So as much as we say, if we add more seeds, the Kenyans are going to suffer more. If we do this, the Kenyans are suffering more. I don't see really whether that is the fact. Because the fact is, with looking at the 47 counties with the same parameters and everything, there are those that chose to work within what they have, and they have done tremendously well. There are those that chose, with whatever we have, we want to eat, finish, and go and leave for the others to come and also try and eat.
And vie for the new slots.
And vie for new slots that are coming. And we will see the same governors who have done so badly coming in with these new slots. And we will elect them.
Why?
So the problem, I think Kenyans, I can't tell what we really are, because you can't even understand when you're being punished by the same person every day, you're being given the
Then you say,
worst
please
every
bring
day,
some more punishment.
and you
Come
still
and
go
beat me
back
some
and tell him, thank you, today you told me that
Beaten
you
me
will
well.
try
Come and
next
beat me
time.
some more tomorrow.
Beat me more, you know. So I don't think the positions have a problem. Because when I look at the positions, actually, we didn't have the 47 counties. We got the 47 counties. If you go to some of these counties, you would never have seen even a one-story house those days.
Yep.
But after the counties came in, you can see every county you go there, you will see something that has come up because of the county being. So the problem is not positions. The problem is how we use those positions to try and assist our people.
So
Even if we had everyone being in position of power, everyone in Kenya being in position of power, it doesn't matter. You will pay them. Where are they going to use the money they are paid?
Yeah.
How are they going to use the resources they have? That is the problem. It's not the number of people in power. I don't think that is the problem.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Good day.
0719-012-600 or Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter. Post your comments. John Chapkwani says, permit me to ask, suppose a loser refuses to concede defeat and holds on that he won, but his election was stolen. As has been the norm, what happens? One thing is sure, that as death, you cannot satisfy everyone, especially the politicians. Our current constitution is good.
Think about it as a race. You run the race. There's one winner. Are you going to stand at the ribbon and hold the ribbon and choke on the ribbon and say, you know what? I deserve a place. Meanwhile, you all trained for however long you needed to train. You knew what the course was like. You even studied the conditions before. You had people who were advising you on, this is what to do, how to breathe. This is the kind of food you should be ingesting along. But you lost. Somebody at that point, on that particular day, was able to carry the day and won the race. Why should you insist on standing on that finish line and say, you know what, I deserve a chance on the podium? What are you talking about? The person who ran the race and won deserves it even more.
We're discussing politics, huh? And the permeations around it and the rules by which our politics as Kenyans are governed, we see it playing out in the US. I don't know why they're borrowing these things from us. But we have to understand it in that context. And you must read political situations and interpret those things from a political perspective. This logic that we use in everyday life as to you wake up, you do this, that logic doesn't always work in politics. At least our politics, it doesn't. Consider, for instance, what it is that people consider. People consider that in our politics, the reality for most politicians, they will be rigged. Now, the rigging, if you're realistic...
If you win.
No.
If you win, there's no rigging.
Oh, no.
And if you win, you don't expect the other individual to come up and start talking about how they deserve a seat at the table.
I'm not talking about rigging at the level of the president. No, I'm talking about a political system even within the parties. Our rigging begins there. And if you talk to people in political parties, they will tell you, this argument that you're talking about, it arises there. Somebody who thought they were popular enough, it starts there.
You go.
It just plays
what
up.
What you just said, somebody who thought that they were popular enough then ends up not winning. The only reason why they didn't win is because there was rigging. And now, had that individual won, they would not have expected somebody else to come and say that there was rigging. They would have said it was a fair election. Everything went on as normal.
Actually, the unfortunate thing is that there usually is rigging. That is the unfortunate thing. People can talk of rigging and there's none. Then you can talk of rigging and it exists. Unfortunately, there always is. Because even within those political setups, there'll be people who are favorites of the leader in that region, the chairman of that division. This is just the reality of politics.
And now people take that reality and use it to their advantage, even when it doesn't play out in their particular circumstance.
Especially if it doesn't.
People will take it and say, because we know that rigging is so widely accepted, quote unquote, I'm going to use this as a reason why this should be done all over again, or why I assume that, you guys should just leave it to me because after all, rigging occurs. You want to use the example of the United States because the system's so solid. They took it to the highest court in the land, said, you know what, present your evidence, not on belief or sensation or how a particular person is feeling on a particular day. The evidence does not point to. So regardless of who it is that brought the case forward, we throw it out and say,
the bad manner starts like that. Even in America, if in 2024 you have the same kind of conversation happening, you remember this conversation happened 4 years ago, that there was manipulation, there was all. This conversation is happening now with someone going to the Supreme Court and saying it was rigged. If it happens again in 2024 and again in 2028, it will become the norm.
That
It
anybody
will
who
be
loses
that there is,
will go and
yes,
say there is cause for complaint.
there's rigging.
because there
of
was
this
rigging
system.
that took place.
Yeah.
You see,
Let's hear from Charles Joroge, who is calling from Roiro. Charles, good morning.
Good morning. First and foremost, I like the debate, gentlemen and lady. And one thing I appreciate is that you bring facts and issues as they are. Now, I have 3 quick points. One is that there is no other time, I think, in the history of this country that Kenya has had many readers than we have had with the 2020 Constitution. You know, in the past, we never had governors, neither deputy governors, neither CECs.
Yep.
Yet, we want to create more leaders. Now, these leaders mean more Prados. They mean more PADMs. They mean more offices. In fact, next time I think we should be measuring the level of leadership, by the number of Prados per population, because essentially this is what we are bringing in this country. Too many leaders, too much leadership with very little leadership. I think that's the challenge.
Too many
we
leaders,
have
little
as a country.
leadership.
Absolutely. Now, the second point I have is that, and this is something that we've shared, even in many forums. This issue of one man, one vote, one shilling is good, but I think there are better innovative ways of deploying it than the current constitutional amendment is trying to put across. The point was this: why couldn't we have gotten the average voting population per constituency, and agreed 50,000? Then after that, we say if you have 100,000, then you become a super MP. Like the electoral college, you'll have 2 votes. You will have 2 CDFs, and that kind of thing. And that way we retain the number, but then the impact is able to be seen on the ground. And thirdly is the issue of the health sector. Last month, I lost a brother in Kenyatta National Hospital. And, of course, it was a long journey. But you'd go there and you listen to the nurse, and you'd go home also disappointed about your country. Because she tell you, this ward has 78 patients. And out of these 78 patients, we are only 2. It's a men ward, and we are ladies. We are lady nurses. Now, our take is this: why can't the government employ just more nurses so that when you come to the hospital, we are able to give you hope?
Yeah.
Essentially, because we know we can ask you for medicine and you shall be able to buy.
Yeah.
I'm worried about Kenya, but I think, of course, I'm not sure what to do. I can see the challenges, but I know together we shall be able to achieve more. But I think time has come for the leadership to really look inwardly and ask ourselves, what is the feeling within the community? I'm not sure we're in tandem. I rest my case, and good morning.
Thank you very much, Charles. Thank you very much. 0719-012-600. We're coming to the top of the hour. We have been having a conversation around this about, the president's speech. Edu Richie says, actually, guys, I forgot to mention that we have a PR president more than a leader. The president actually speaks to a nation that he doesn't have an idea of. That's why I told you way back, I doubt that the president has advisors. Those are the views of Edu Richie Tosh on social media. Keep it right here. More conversations coming up in the next hour. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room. Now it's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, guys,
Traffic.
so we still have that issue on the southern bypass today, headed towards Mombasa Road from that area. Outbound, though, it's not too bad. It's moving quite slowly. But as you get past that accident, you should be all right. Then joining Langata Road. Thika Road is building up, but it's moving. We don't have a bumper-to-bumper situation there. Getting out then towards Survey and then out towards the Pangani underpass, looking pretty good. Looking also... Ngong Road looks good, as does Langata Road. We don't have much of an issue there. Coming out of Western's also pretty good into the city centre. So it looks like that Monday that you want to relive over and over and over again. talk to us about what you might see later. Spice FM KE on Twitter or text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your...
After 8, this is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We thank you very much for choosing us this and every morning, wherever you are. Whether you're in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, or in Kathmandu, or wherever in the world. We are broadcasting on Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and spicefm.co.ke. As we begin the hour, and as we hear today's proverb from C.T. Muga, let's say good morning to Justus, our friend in Kilifi. Good morning, Justus.
Hey, good morning, Eric, Ndu, and C.T. How are you?
Good morning.
We're well, thank you.
How is Nairobi?
Good.
How is Kilifi?
Kilifi is okay. We thank God the coconuts are still ripening.
Good.
Yeah, I just wanted to contribute a couple of points, and let me wish that when our leaders go for this benchmarking business and others, they could at least take lessons in history. If they did, then they could learn that our democracy, what it needs, is a stronger grassroots than a treetop multiplication of positions. So if our objective is to strengthen our democracy and make it work, we should be investing more on the wards, on the villages, at the very most at the county, so that people can get the services, but at the same time learn on how the system works and even solve those problems. Because tribalism, this is about tribalism. We want to sort out the people who fight don't fight in parliament. The tribal fighters, the clashes are on the grassroots. So if we could strengthen the conversations at the grassroots level, then maybe we could justify our intention to change things, to multiply offices, if at all democracy was our focus. However, it isn't.
So what do you think the focus is?
We are simply trying to, we have what we may call City will help me here, the Marie Antoinette problem. The people are suffering, and you ask them, why are they suffering? Why can't they eat cake? They don't have ugali, they don't have beans, they don't have anything. You ask them, why are they making noise? Let them eat cake. The same thing we're having if you make it more if you bring it to the national level. The leaders know the people are suffering, but themselves are not suffering. And because they are not suffering, they think the solution is for them to amass more power, bring more of their cronies and friends to the top of the table, once the Kenyans on the ground simply should be looking for cake.
That's an interesting perspective, Justice.
Yes. Because look at it like this. You saw that young man who died, the doctor who died the other day. For 5 months, he had not earned a salary. For 6 years, he had been in medical school. Yet, the leaders in his own county are talking BBI, but not about young doctors who are suffering outside in the cold. So if you were to have priorities right, could you be talking about national offices or strengthening the counties and sub-counties to ensure that doctors who are sent even to their villages can have a modicum of comfort when they're offering services to their people? Schools are about to open. Yesterday I got an email from a school where my son goes. They're telling us we need to have some sort of branded masks, because if we buy the common ones, the boys are likely to share them, even misuse them.
So you have to put a name tag.
If your son is called Okelo Chien, you need to find a way that his mask is is Okello Ochieng's mask, so that in case it drops somewhere,
we'll know who
Okello Ochieng's mask can be able to be found.
Right.
That looks a very basic and common sense suggestion from the teachers, isn't it? But how many Kenyans, how many mwananchi wa kawaida are capable of going to have branded masks for their children in these circumstances? So if we are talking about a government that really looks at improving service delivery, strengthening democracy, making it more inclusive, should they be talking about getting more ministers or more village elders who can be able to educate people on public health? Or should they be talking about more teachers to teach more children in the village? So I go back to the thing about history. I wish our leaders could read more about history. Because when Marie Antoinette made that statement, that if they don't have cake, let them eat if they don't have bread, let them eat bread, you know the fate.
Yep.
It never happens overnight, but it goes on and it begins slowly, until people lose faith in the system.
Yep.
Just as when you look at what we're discussing here, doesn't it seem sometimes like a never-ending vicious cycle?
Yes, and yes, it looks like a never-ending cycle. But remember, the other day we talked. I mentioned something about chaos theory, right?
Yes.
It's not accidental. It's not accidental. When you have a system where somebody walks by an office and gets $1 million tender, it may look like an accident of luck. It isn't luck, my friend. It isn't luck. Yeah? It isn't luck. There are systems in place that are meant to avoid, but have been reversed in a way that they can be muddied enough to allow such things to happen. There is a pattern underneath. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Justus.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you,
by the way, Eric.
Yes.
This threat of people telling Kenyans that we fear ethnic clashes or we fear violence during elections. What about elections that makes it possible that people fight? It's because everybody wants to go to Nairobi. So why don't you make Nairobi relevant?
Yep.
Because if we are to fight for your local, or if people are fighting about an office based in Juja, you see any clashes? Because they almost know each other.
Look, we have had 2 elections where we have elected executives to 47 county governments. People don't clash because of who has won in the county.
No, they go on business as usual. In fact, in some communities like where I was born, they tell you, even if I vote for a dog, that is my business.
Yes.
And we laugh about it and move on. But when it comes to a national level, then we are saying we hold this ethnicity thing as a continuous threat to create more exorbitant offices, to waste more resources at the national level, that we appear that we have clashes. Yeah?
It's a bad manners of leadership. Thank you very much, Justus.
Thank you very
Asante.
much.
Let's hear from Hillary in Embakasi. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Okay, I'd like to ask, we are borrowing 2 billion shillings a day, and this 2 billion shillings is not even used for common mwananchi. Meaning you're also supposed to pay the 2 billion shillings with interest a day. We are increasing the leadership, creating more irrelevant seats, of which money will be needed to facilitate this leadership. They will need it to be paid. Their products will be needed to be bought. Yet we still don't have money. We are borrowing money. Meaning we haven't paid our 2 billion shillings daily. We are making more irrelevant seats. It will mean then we have to borrow more money. Instead of looking for ways on how we can facilitate the economy to pay our debt, we are looking on how to create more debt for the country and make mwananchi suffer. And yet the people who are gaining from it are only a handful people from the same table. If a doctor cannot be paid, and because there is no money, you are borrowing money, and the money that you are borrowing goes to an individual pocket. Tell me, how will clashes not be in this country? Because right now you are saying that people are fighting because of leadership. Next time, people will be fighting because of lack of food, lack of medication, and the country will be unstable. Tell me, will the post that you've created solve the situation that you put on the common man?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
So in Kenya, we are heading into a very deep trouble, other than making this country a great one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hillary. Okay, so 11 past. Let's hear today's proverb, and then we continue the conversation.
Right.
Man stung, hive.
No extrapolations here. When a man is stung by a bee, he does not destroy all beehives.
Okay. When a man is stung by a bee, he doesn't
destroy all beehives.
It's squarely. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. If we just ask ourselves the question, why is it that people get so emotional about the person that they are supporting for president and less emotional for the person they are supporting for senator, for MP, for governor, for MCA?
Oh, they do get emotional. They do get emotional. It's just that the hype that is given to a national competition is not the same hype that is given, and the exposure that is given to a regional competition, like, say, that of a governor or that of an MP. But, believe me, the differences exist, and people get emotional, and there's a lot of upheavals. If you want to understand what we're discussing, you have to get historical about it. And what has played and what the media has helped contribute to it and how it has played out. Because the competition at some level is not about the presidency. The competition at some level is about communities and differences that have existed from the time of independence. At some level, if you're asking what the issue is about, the issue is about, again, the same thing we're experiencing: broken promises, broken political promises. You even wonder, is there anything like a political promise being kept? But that's a different discussion. So when you mix all these things together, you then have a never-ending narrative of differences that arise, but it seems to be a self-serving interest that only those who are at play within this particular sphere seem to enjoy. So at some level, there's an understanding that the game needs to continue, and at some level, there's an understanding that even as we disagree, at some point we're going to agree. So at the end of it, the pawn in the game is this person we refer to as the Mwananchi, who keeps voting and hoping and thinking.
Well, those emotions are so easily whipped.
Yes, and
Because
turned
that's the
around and
issue for me.
twisted.
I mean,
Yes,
at
exactly.
what point does somebody just look and feel, you know what, we have won this election?
Let me ask you.
We won it, or we must win this election.
Eric,
we
let
must
me
show
ask.
them dust.
Let me ask you the simple question. It works both ways. How do you start a process and saying that we must ensure that we win?
Yeah.
You see? Now, the question, I raised this sometimes back, and I said, when you put things into play, please consider if those things were in the hands of the person that you are competing against. Don't think about what you will do with them when you get into power. And this is a discussion that takes place even at the constitutional level, when we had an opportunity to form a government that was parliamentary in nature. We had the opportunity, we let it go by, didn't we? We've had many opportunities, we let it go by. And if you look at many of the things that we are now dealing with, they have again to do with promises made at a particular time and understanding, and then the promises are not kept. We have had cases where blatantly people in power say, no, in fact, we said this knowing because we wanted power. We've now got it. So essentially saying, why do we need to keep this promise? Now, but they're games. And they're dangerous games to play because they will come to an end at some point. And this person you're playing games with will understand that the game that is being played fully, the loser is not the person you think has lost, but you, the Mwananchi. It's you who is the perennial and constant loser.
You will always lose. Whether your person has won or lost, you have lost.
So long as the initial goal of this game, which they were entering into, was really not for you to benefit.
And it
I
is.
think that's one thing that's clear now.
Yeah.
If it isn't clear to Kenyans at this point, then I don't know what it's going to take. An earthquake of sorts for it to be shaken into the psyche of Kenyans to understand that, unfortunately, we must believe the side that says, when people are getting into political competition, it has nothing to do with you as Mwananchi. Whereas you would hope that somebody was getting into government to be able to lead, to be able to develop, to be able to make life better for you, as is your right within the boundaries of this country. That would be the hope. That somebody is getting into power, or somebody's coming to ask for your vote, so that once they get in, they're making life essentially better for you, or that making it easier for them, for you to contribute to this country and its development.
Yep.
That would be the desire. However, you can assume, and probably without any wrong on your part, that anybody who is getting into political competition right now to be able to lead and govern this country is not doing it for you. They've shown you over and over again, I beg you to believe them, that it is not about you. It's everything about them and people that they can surround themselves with at this point to make life better for themselves. Over and over and over again, they have shown you this.
Before we look at the weather, let's hear from Ken, who is calling from Kisumu. Ken, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning to you, Ken.
Yes.
Hello,
And
Ken.
I have a contribution.
Yes, go
I'm
ahead.
from Kisumu. I have a contribution.
Uh-huh.
Yes, there is this thing in Kenya and in Africa. I don't think there is a point in time we will have elections without violence. Because at the end of the day, promises made, promises kept. Most of the promises made by our politicians are never kept because of the legislation from Parliament. Due to the weak legislation, that's why we have promises which are made and never kept. At the end of the day, we have money allocated for these promises. But unfortunately, because of corruption and other things, they are never achieved. There is no single day, I think, we will have elections without violence.
You're giving up too early, don't you think, sir?
Yes.
Essentially, what I hear you saying is that we are doomed. No matter which way we turn, no matter what happens, we are doomed. And there's no way out. Do you really think that is a fair reflection on the situation we have?
The only way out, we need a better legislation from Parliament. Money allocated for water must be utilized for water. We don't have people pocketing money for water. At the end of the day, if the Mwananchi is satisfied with wherever he is, there is no single day you go to the streets to demonstrate.
But Ken, I actually don't think we need more legislation on this. The laws and regulations that we have in place now are enough. It is the person that has the power, the person who's given that mandate to implement, but should be honest and should do what they're supposed to do. And there is no amount of legislation that is going to ensure that this person is honest.
At the end of the day, he's going to steal.
Yeah. If a person is getting into a position of authority with the intention to steal, and if we do not scrutinize them very well, and we don't apply sufficient pressure ourselves as citizens, this person will steal. You have all the laws that says, you cannot even withdraw this shilling without documenting how you're taking it. And as long as they intend to steal and they can get away with it, they'll do it. We've lost Ken. Anyway, let's take a break now and just go to take a quick break, see what's happening in terms of the weather. We know Mombasa is very sunny this morning. We know coconuts are...
Nairobi is also sunny.
Yeah.
Maybe not as sunny as Mombasa, but Nairobi is sunny.
So let's see what's happening in Lubumbashi and in Kathmandu. That's coming up. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life 24/7 around the world non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Hii krisi tukiwapea mtawezana. Star Times brings you the FKF Premier League. Hii ligi ni yetu, twende nayo. You can also enjoy the Europa League, La Liga and FA Cup. To enjoy, simply get a satellite dish for only 2,699 shillings and aerial decoder for only 1,499 shillings and watch the FKF Premier League live and in HD exclusively on BTV channel 172 and 463. Recharge for 2 months and get upgraded for 2 months or call 0719 077 000.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
Okay, so some
You're
sunny
listening.
Nairobi this morning. We're going to see highs of 26. Coming down to lows of 16 today. Very slight chance of rain later, but we'll have to wait and see. 16 degrees and sunny. Nakuru, highs of 27 and lows of 12. We're looking at sunny conditions in Nyeri, going to highs of 26 and then down to lows of 10. It's mostly sunny in Eldoret. Quite cool this morning, however. Highs of 24 and partly sunny in Kisumu at 17. Highs of 29. And in Kakamega, 17 as well. Partly sunny conditions going to highs of 31. Yes, it is sunny in some parts of Mombasa, but light rain being experienced in other parts and a 50% chance of it continuing throughout today. Where it is sunny with 0% chance of rain is Malindi at 17, going to highs of 30 and lows of 16. It's mostly sunny in Kampala at 20. We'll see highs of 26 and lows of 18. Also sunny conditions in Dar es Salaam at 26. We'll see highs of 31 and 24 the high in Johannesburg, where it's mostly sunny at 17. Cloudy conditions in Lagos at 25, going to highs of 31. And in Kinshasa, which is not too far from Lumumbashi, mostly cloudy conditions, highs of 32 and lows of 24.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Taking your calls and sampling your comments on social media. This is 0719-012-600 or Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So, 57 years of independence, and this is where we are at right now, fighting COVID-19, looking at a constitution that has been in place for 10 years. The president believes that time is ripe for the First Amendment to the 2010 Constitution, and that First Amendment, he looks at it from the bigger thing politically that it brings to the people, to the fore, and this is the expansion of the executive. And he says that expanding the executive then does well for the country because it brings in, it ushers in peace, it ushers in co-creation, it ushers in justice. And the question that we're asking ourselves is, all right, so is that it? And also, what about everything else that's ailing the country? What about everything else? What about the position that we find ourselves in terms of debt? What about the position we find ourselves in? We are fighting COVID-19. What about the position we find ourselves in? We are fighting runaway corruption. What about the position that we find ourselves in? We have issues with locusts, with the floods, and there are very many people who have been affected by these things, in addition to COVID-19, and there are people who are really suffering in the country right now.
You know, there's a quality that Kenyans have that is being exploited negatively. It is that of hope. When people keep believing, despite evidence to the contrary, that they shouldn't hope in that direction, and they keep hoping, it's a positive thing. It means Kenyans, we are a people who don't give up easily.
You're resilient.
Yes, but perhaps the lesson to learn here is not to give up, but where to direct your hope. Because we seem to direct our hope at individuals. And yet what we should clamor for are systems that, irrespective of which individual is in place, will not actually change. It's a lesson that you take from America or in the West. Now remember, they weren't always that way. But also remember that America was a place people ran to because things weren't working where they had originally come from. And so they knew systems which didn't work. It doesn't mean that they didn't try to implement what they had run away from. They did. But when you have systems that you can rely on, then at least there is hope. And that is why there's this persistent, should we say, allegiance that they have to their flag, to their country, because there's an understanding that irrespective of who you are, something can work out positively. And there's ample evidence that is true. You can come from wherever you come from with nothing, and you can make something of yourself. Now, with the effort that Kenyans make, and with just the gusto and the energy that Kenyans apply to just everyday life. Now, imagine if that was applied in the right direction. Because sometimes it's applied in the wrong direction. Hoping in an individual is all good and well, but you must be realistic about it because there's a limit to what an individual can actually do.
So here we are saying essentially that we've gotten it wrong then. because however, if you're using the United States as an example, in principle, you could wake up in the middle of the night and things were not going right. But because you have a system so solid, you would expect that the system then would be able to sort out the issue no matter who was in the driver's seat. This person could be here today, gone tomorrow.
It doesn't matter.
The system is what is going to
Yes.
push them forward. That you can bank on it, that even when people were worried about an election gone wrong, they knew at the back of their minds that, all right, whatever the case, the system's so solid that if there were inadequacies, that will be found out and dealt with. But if things were going to be upheld, you could be sure that the upholding of that was not based on how somebody felt, what was based on how the principles of the system were set up, right? So what we are saying in this case is that things need to be turned upside down. That we need to move from this banking on personality, and then we need to invest in principles within a system that would work regardless of the personality that sat in the driver's seat.
And if you're going to look at a personality, this is a personality who will hold the promise that they're going to ensure such systems exist.
Exactly.
So the system will be even above and beyond them.
Right. So they say that regardless of what I would like to do, I remember very clearly a speech by President Obama, and he said, I would very much like to run again. I would like to be in this position of president one more time. But guess what? The system would not allow me to do so. So what am I showing you? Essentially that I, as an individual, I am in a position whereby I could be all-powerful. But there's something that is being upheld even higher than my head, which I am showing you that I'm interested in moving this country forward, and that is why I am going to allow the system run its course. It would seem like it would be forever long that we would be able to get to a place like that, whereby you say, let the principles by which we have set up in the first place be the guide for how the country is going to operate.
But you know something?
It sounds like a dream
when
you think about it, but it really is not.
No.
It can actually happen.
Not only can it happen, we have already seen things that we didn't think would happen happening. Okay? So this isn't far-fetched at all. No. It's not even just about tweaking it. Consider, who would have thought if you were an adult in the Moi era, or in the era of the one-party system, where you couldn't even breathe anything against the government. And if you did, then you might be breathing through other orifices. We then came about when the president himself, at that time, President Moi, allowed for multipartyism. For me, that I didn't anticipate, neither did I think it would happen. No, it happened. Then we set in motion the 2 terms. That's an amendment of the Constitution. Lo and behold, what happened? The president actually left. He stepped aside, left. Other people came in.
Yep.
The 3rd president came in, left. We now have a 4th president. He's about to leave. These are things we had not anticipated. Believe me, other countries don't see these things. It's a joke, it's a dream, you hope, you pray, as we see it. We are not in an impossible situation. We're just in a difficult situation, but it's not impossible. If these things can happen, and these things were once deemed as impossible, this thing that we think is not possible is really genuinely possible. It is. It's very possible. This county system that we have here, this one which is being abused, you see, let's break it down and ask ourselves, okay, you have a county system. The thing, among other things, that the county system has brought up, that we elect people and give them jobs that are beyond their capacity. Someone is a good politician, you assume they'll be a good manager. No. Our mistake. Let's learn from it. They were a good politician, but this managing is not really their thing.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Yes, there are people who may not even be good politicians, but they end up being governors. But they're good managers. And you can see they're good managers. Our experience and evolution as people who actually vote and how we should vote is actually taking place. But look, it's within a setup where we can question things and debate about them. That in itself is progress. There are places you cannot have this conversation at whatever level. We are having it.
Now, the problem is that conversation is being hijacked. So we are trying to have a conversation of trying to really look and understand what have we learned, what mistakes can we take from this, how can we correct ourselves. And before we even get that, it's hijacked, and we're told, now this is the problem, and this is the solution. See, that's where the problem is. But we're trying to understand ourselves. So,
we even try to understand
so we
what
have
the problem is.
now we are dealing with county, we are dealing with MCA. MCA goes to county assembly, executive does this. There's a kind of development that we should be seeing. No.
It's like a child who's trying to figure out a math sum, and they're trying to understand the process of this formula. But then you come and say, you know what? It's okay. Here's the answer. Hand in your paper. Move on. What learning has the child gone through?
Actually, someone comes with a whole new
formula.
Question and a whole new formula. Trying to understand Pythagoras' theorem. Someone comes in here just trying to. 8:30. Let's take a look at the traffic, and then this conversation continues.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice FM. Spice up your life. Traffic.
Nope. Not much today, guys. The issue on Southern Bypass has more or less been sorted. So heading towards Mombasa Road from the Southern Bypass should be a little bit easier now. Mombasa Road, all the way from the SGR, there's actually not much traffic. Build up just a little bit around Cabanas, and then it's Easy Street thereafter. Also looks like the construction is going to take a break for a while and then come back after a few days. But for now, it's looking pretty good. Thika Road is slow in some parts, but moving generally well. Okay, so let's see what it looks like in about half hour, and as people get where they're going, or those who are not going anywhere. But the roads are looking pretty good this Monday morning, guys. Spice FMKE, just in case something happens, let us know, or text on 40127.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
79. Mark Timothy Kinyoda says, Kenya faces a leadership crisis, not a constitutional crisis. We're in a mess because of the decisions made by our leadership. Let's do away with the leadership and not the constitution.
The thing is, I know it sounds complex, and it at some level it is complex, but doing away with the leaders, you will bring in new leaders. But remember, people come into leadership and follow a certain culture that they find within that sphere of leadership. So getting rid of this person doesn't change anything. The next person who comes in will just fall in line, and they'll be doing what the other person was doing, or they'll even be more creative than the previous person. So not much will have changed.
So what do we need to change?
The change here, I want to be careful about what I'm about to prescribe, and I want to make sure I phrase it correctly. The change here is in understanding that you need to look at the problem realistically, not wishfully.
Okay.
Wishfully is saying change. That's the easy bit. Realistically is this culture we speak of, this thing that we keep talking about, we are an integral part of it. Just start there. We don't think very differently from our leaders. No. We think in terms of, if somebody I know is in a position of power, then I stand to benefit. We all think like that. But we want to think, let us set up a system which, again, as we've said, doesn't really matter whether somebody I like or I do not like is in power. But say basic services that are due to me, I will still get.
Okay.
Now, how do you do that?
Don't we have that system in place?
No, we don't. We don't have it. We don't have it. We don't have it because, and this is what I'm saying, our thinking. We don't have it because systems are run by individuals. We may have a constitution that states categorically this is what should happen. But so long as the culture that influences our thinking is at play, when I get to a position, instead of adhering to the norms of what is written down and what I know, I will
want to
go
come
by,
and do my own.
Yes, I will go by the cultural influence that I have or the societal influence that I have, whatever it is. That is what takes place. So I manipulate the system to work for me in a certain way.
So on paper, the system is there.
Oh, this is on paper. We have a perfect system.
The persons who occupy that system are the ones who are letting
They are
us
captive.
down.
They are captive. We are captive.
They're captive of what?
We are captive of this societal norm that is that is enshrined in our cultural thinking and cultural influences. When you talk of tribalism, you think ethnic, geographically based. No. That's not really it. At a certain level, the way we think is the culture that influences us is the economic culture that we belong to. Now, we throw in tribe because that has to do with an understanding of a loyalty that we need to apply to certain geographical areas. But the truth of the matter is, I have more in common with somebody who went to school as I did. I have more in common with somebody who went to the learning institution I went to than the person who shares the geographical background as I do. Yes. Because that geography is somewhere I visit maybe once in a while.
Yep.
But the person who influences me on a daily basis is the person I interact with daily. Now, that's what I'm talking about.
Let's hear from Wangeshi. Wangeshi in Nakuru. Good morning.
Morning, Eric.
How are you, Wangeshi?
I'm very fine, thank you. Morning, Du.
Good morning, Wangeshi.
NCT.
Yes.
I'm enjoying the show. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's lovely. Tell us
No, mine-
what especially you're enjoying.
No, mine is a question.
Okay.
You know, when they had this committee in Parliament, I think was it on Friday or Thursday, about the KEMSA scandal.
Yes.
There was a Treasury official who said that they check the bottom lines of the money they've dispatched to counties every day. And he told us, as we speak, the amount of money that has not been consumed by counties is 42 billion. They check every day. I didn't know that. So my question is, some city maybe you might want to unpack for me. We know the gusto with which our governors and everybody else wants to consume. So why is it that we have money being taken back to treasury? What stops them from consuming this money? Why is it just being held in bank accounts? I'm baffled.
Wangeshi asked the question, did the money even leave treasury in the first place? Remember,
well, this guy said
remember with the government, you have a budget, there's an allocation, and then there's accessing it. If you talk to anybody in the county, they will tell you, yes, we have been told that this money that is for us, but we have not yet accessed it. But in government books, the money exists and it should be given, but it hasn't been received. That's one perspective. The other perspective you want to consider is this. When monies are given to the county, they're given for specific purposes. So you can't go around just doing what you want with it.
Yes.
So if it's allocated and it's in a vote for a specific project in a specific department or ministry within the county, and it hasn't been utilized for what it was purposed for, the money will remain unutilized. It's just a reality.
So why don't they then realize, come with projects up with? They are the ones who did the budget. It's the counties that do the budget. They're the ones who plan.
But there's a third issue here. Counties are usually required, it's mandatory that they account for what they have been given in accordance with why it was that money was given to them. I'm putting it simply.
Yes.
And if you are due to receive money, but you have not adequately justified how it is utilized the others, you are not going to get some more.
Oh.
It's not automatic.
You know, the thing is, so
why are you giving them 35% more if they can't even use the 15%?
There's always that debate on the absorption rate, and the absorption rate, no county ever gets 100% absorption rate, not even at the national level.
Yes.
No ministry gets to 100% absorption rate. It's all because of that game that is played. I mean, it's a whole bureaucracy.
Right.
So money has been released by the National Treasury, but for you to access it, you have to go to the controller of budget. So to the controller of budget and say, this is the money that I require for this particular project. project at this point. So if, for example, you have budgeted for this amount of money and the rate at which the money is coming at you is not one in which you are in control of, then you're not even able to say that, okay, by the time that money hits our account at the national level we can access, we shall be ready with project A, B, C. We shall have moved to the point where we can tell the controller of budget we are ready to absorb the money. So the National Treasury will keep saying, there is so much money they have not accessed. But in reality, when was that money required? When was that money made available?
In fact, Eric, you've said you mentioned this before. Consider Wangeshi, for instance, that money has been made available after all these things that are required of you has been met. In June is D-Day. The money is given to you in May. And you had planned to spend the money over a year. How are you going to spend this money in 1 month?
It's true. It's a game.
It is, unfortunately.
Thank you, Wangeshi.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
It's Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Actually, I think we should bring in some people here to talk about that absorption rate. Why is it that they have those issues, especially the control of budget? She can come and tell us, this is what I see. So the reason why these guys are not able to take up the money when they're supposed to be taking up the money, even starting from the county governments as well, why is it that you're not able to absorb the money that has been allocated to you?
But alongside this individual, let's also bring in someone from the Ministry of Finance.
The Treasury.
Yes, exactly. To explain to us how it is. This thing that we're calling a game, is it really a game or is it a figment of our imagination? Or can they shed more light into so that we understand how it is things happen the way we read it or we understand them to happen? Yes.
So it's just talk here, talk there. Somebody goes and says, we gave them money, but we did. It was available.
But nobody's asking when.
Every year, X amount of money is returned to the National Treasury because the ministries are not able to absorb. And yet you keep increasing that budget. Every year's budget is just going up by close to 1 trillion shillings. So if last year's absorption rate was not that much, so why did you...
What makes you think... Yes, exactly.
Why are you increasing the budget this year?
There's a bit of this particular drama that plays out really nicely when it comes to paying out vendors. And an edict is issued, clear, forthright, to the point. Vendors will be paid first before A, B, C, D happen. And a schedule is laid out. Vendors who are owed money from 20, God knows what, that history, of course, will be first. You talk to people who are owed money. And the stories
in that category.
Yes. Yes. My friend, the stories you hear actually they fall in the category of horror stories. Said people who did some work 2 months ago are being paid and we still haven't been paid. So you talk to somebody who is they tell you no. You see what happens with these people? We ask them to lay out this thing. The county government. They're supposed to bring us a schedule on these terms. This is how they're supposed to do it. Now when they don't, you actually go back to factory settings and start all over again, which means time keeps moving, payments are not made, and God alone knows what else happens in between.
Yeah. We just heard from Wangeshi in Nakuru. Let's hear from Disho in Nairobi. Good morning, Disho.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Very well.
I've been listening to your conversation, but not for a long time. I just switched on my radio.
Okay.
There's only one thing that we miss in Kenya, and I'll tell you this for a fact. Something called consequence. What are the consequences of my stealing? What are the and then again, we baptize stealing and we call it corruption. If we are going to deal with thieves, let's not classify this. You go to this department, be tried before they are taken to court. That doesn't work for any government or for any country for that matter. Let's take, for example, the U.S. If you are corrupt or you steal public money in the U.S., within a month you're in jail if there's proof and there's evidence. In Kenya, you can steal and become a governor. You can steal and become anything you can want to become because people also in Kenya praise thieves or corrupt people. We have, either we have laws that will be followed, and that we will know that what is the consequence of my stealing or of my corruption. Is I will be jailed. If you steal in China or if you're corrupt, they'll kill you, and we know this. Everybody knows this. So there's consequences there, but there's no consequences of stealing in Kenya. Or if you steal, you'll be able to bribe a judge or anybody, and then you go scot-free, and tomorrow you'll be the prime minister or anything in this republic. So let's not pretend that we don't know what the cure is for corruption or for all these things that go happen in county government or in the national government, that before you're paid your money, you have to bribe. We know that those things happen. Either we legalize them and say that internationally Kenya is a corrupt state, or we know that these are the consequences. And if you know there's a judge who's been bribed, he has also got to face the consequences. Until we have firm consequences, these questions will keep on coming up and down forever. We legalize corruption. Yeah, what is, if you go now, right now, you shoot an elephant, you know the consequences.
Yeah.
That's why you find that people do it. Very few people do it. So if there is corruption, if I steal public money, if I am involved in Arol and Kim, what are the consequences? There's none. Let's not pretend that we don't know what
take long, and then we come and say, these are complex cases, so they'll take long, and then it's difficult for us to prove. In China, within a week, you're gone.
You're gone. In the US, the same.
You're the richest man in the country, Boshila. You're killed, and your wife too.
You're killed. Let me ask you. You're in court. You're because of corruption. You did this, and you still want to be the one in charge of criminal justice in this republic. And it happens, and it will happen.
Yeah.
People are going on and on and on because, number one, you impoverish the people, impoverish the communities, so that when you loot, they see you as a demigod. You become a demigod.
Yeah.
So people worship you. People worship things in this republic, and it's a fact. So until we have, don't be told by we need this law, we need to change this constitution. We don't need to do anything. We just need to understand that we need consequences.
Thank
If
you.
you rape somebody's wife, what are the consequences? People will either ban you alive or you definitely dead. So don't get that. You don't even need. By the way, let me tell you something. Even this law of saying that somebody has got to have a degree to be the president of anything in this kind of republic, it's not rubbish. We need people. We have got very clever people who never went to school. And they can lead this republic in a very nice way. They can be judges. Okay, now, judges, of course, you have to have studied law. But I'm telling you, until we have solid, something called consequences in this republic, things will go wrong.
But remember, if you're talking political leadership, all these people, and I agree with you that they do exist, they really have to present themselves to the electorate to be voted in. And if they don't, then they will never be in that position where they can lead.
That's what I'm saying. We worship corrupt people. I don't even know why people complain. Look, like now.
But surely, there are many people we vote in simply because at the time we're voting them in, they're not corrupt.
Yeah, they're just giving us a bit of shillings here and there. They're just not corrupt.
But let me tell you something. What happens? They know I will spend a lot of money, but in a few months I'll get all my loot all my money back.
Yeah,
I'll
it's an
give you
investment.
a very simple example. Let me give you a simple example. I'm the chairman of Kangemi Neighborhood Association. There's a road in Kangemi called Murada Road. That road was paid for to be paved by the county government. It was never paid. It was never done, and the money was paid. And I'm a witness. And that guy is now going to be given
So
another tender.
the money was paid to a contractor.
Yes, to pay to do Murada Road in Kangemi. We've been trying to call Buddy. I think today is coming to Kangemi. Look at the market. Money was paid for the market. We have so many things going wrong. But even if you you report them, who are you going to tell? So what is going to happen? That guy will go and bribe that guy, and there's even another tender. So until we have something called consequences.
Thank you, Ndisho. Get your point.
We have consequences or we legalize corruption.
One or the other. Thank you, Ndisho. Dr. Simon Kegondu, good morning.
Good morning, Du. Good morning, Eric. Good morning. Let me congratulate you again. The program is very nice. I just want to make one small point that CT has made, and it's very deep. The point of strengthening systems. Where, in fact, he has answered one of my biggest problems, whereby bias of the person who has been brought into office affects the system. So they manipulate the system to suit their needs. A good example is in health, in human resources for management, where us as the healthcare workers think that a health service commission is the system that will standardize the management of human resources for health. But the push by governors, for instance, not to have the same, they quote one or two governors who have done very well, but forget to quote the other governors who have not done well. Therefore, if you have a system that actually standardizes so that our measurement is not on which governor has done what. For instance, if you look at universal health coverage, they always keep quoting Makueni Health. They now forget to go to the other places. But for the success of devolution in quotes, they go to Makueni. But they forget the other places where there have been strikes the whole 8 years. And therefore, that standardization, and I think this is what institutions push to. For instance, if you have the Health Service Commission, then you would have an equitable distribution and equitable treatment of the healthcare and then service you do. I think we need to explore that one where intrinsic biases of culture, they affect the system even if the system is there. It is a very good point by CT.
Dr. Thank you very much. How have you been? Are you well?
I'm well. I'm just observing, avoiding COVID and things like that. We are trying quietly to put systems in place.
We are delighted to hear from you again. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Doc. What do you make of the president's speech? He did not mention anything about the ongoing strike by nurses and clinical officers.
Yes, so personally, I choose to concentrate on the positives. We postponed our strike to allow for dialogue. And if you've been following the parliamentary and Senate engagements, things are just bringing out themselves. You will see how the governors are wanajishtaki huko Parliament and Senate. And we hope that Parliament and Senate are listening. So I think we need to follow the proceedings in Parliament and Senate because those are the people who might help us.
Okay, but nurses and clinical officers are on strike.
Yes, so what happens? They have grievances. We support the strike of nurses and clinical officers. Everyone is actually looking for the same thing. And if their issues have not been addressed, for instance, Parliament and Senate did not reach out to nurses and clinical officers. They did not tell them, we will meet you next week. And therefore, they have nothing to hold on to. So even as we look at the whole health system in place, then you latch onto everything that can help mediate the solution. And don't forget that the strike is still on 21st. In Christmas, you might not have doctors if these issues are not resolved.
All right, Doc. Asante sana.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Doc.
0719-012-600. Your views on the state of the nation.
The thing that I always find perplexing is how it is people in positions of leadership develop and grow into a position where they are completely removed from reality. Let me expound on what I mean. You know someone to be a certain type of person at a certain point in time. And you're even happy that they're in that position of authority. And then they get there, there's this transformation. Now, the manifestation of this transformation is that everything that has to do with the authority they have with that position, they seem to use it for anything other than what they're supposed to. I'm saying I find it puzzling.
Yeah.
I find it puzzling because that job isn't for life, meaning
you'll only be there for some time.
There's a period of time when you'll have that job and then it'll come to an end. And there's life after you've had that job. What are these changes that take place? Is it the corrosive influence of power and influence? Is it that there was a hidden aspect of this person's personality that had hitherto not been known? What happens?
Well, from what I understand, I mean, the taste of power is akin to a drug addiction. It's not easy to get off that high. And it's something that you would want to continue experiencing and enjoying as you go along. And unfortunately, once, it's like they say, once you've tasted of it, it would be very difficult to live or imagine a life whereby you're away from it. And so then you are ready and willing to do anything that would keep you in that position, regardless of who you're supposed to be benefiting by virtue of the fact that you're there.
Or is it the fear of being different? Because you
Or
get
the fear of being without.
Or you find yourself in a culture where things go in a certain direction and you don't want to swim against the tide. Or you don't even want to appear to be standing against the tide. You want to go with the flow. Or is it...
You're not confident that you're swimming against the tide. You can actually sustain it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. That's a good perspective. Because you ask, surely, and if you swim with the tide, there are consequences to it. And you will be called and questions will be asked. And at some point, you may think you don't have to, but they will catch up with you at the worst possible time. I'm reminded of Goldenberg. Huh? You know, that case went on forever. People died, cases were still going on. Then there was, remember, this is just part of the many scandals that we've had as a country. I don't think people who are involved or who happen to be in positions where these things came to play at had anticipated that they would be in court for the years they would be in. And you see, it's not just you in court. It affects your life. It affects your family. It affects everything that you do. That is not something that someone anticipates when they either because they don't do what they're supposed to do or they do what they're not supposed to do. Either way, so long as you're in that position, everything that has to do with it will come to bear on your head at some point.
But I also see then the reason, all the more reason why, is that if you had systems which were working, and if all of this was based on sound and strong principle, the truth of the matter is that it would not be that difficult for you to then loosen your reins on power. It wouldn't be. Because if you know that you're going to do a job for a particular period of time, and then there's certain things that you want to make sure are done, when your time is over, it wouldn't be so difficult for you to leave. It might be nostalgic. It might, you wouldn't be, it's something that you were used to for some time. It wouldn't be easy for you to be away from that kind of life, but it would not be difficult for you to let go. Because if you realize that you were just moving this train forward just a little bit in your capacity, because it's something that was going to move with or without you, going in with that realization, getting out would not be difficult. It wouldn't be easy for you to get away from that life that you had become accustomed to. But it would not be difficult for you to leave because you knew that you were going in there to push this thing further just a little bit. You were not there for your own selfish gain.
There's a term Eric likes using with reference to our laws and even our constitution, and says the interpretation by most people that it's a suggestion, meaning it's like a multiple choice question, yes or no, it doesn't really matter. But look at the examples that are set, or the examples that are enshrined when you have a situation where someone clearly breaks the law, but nothing untoward happens to them. They've broken the law, but there's a so what moment, so. Yes. Yes. And then there's the understanding that if they're in a certain position of authority, then breaking the law is okay because nothing will happen.
Can't be touched.
They're entitled to that.
Yes. Now, tell me how far you think the consequences are of this example being entrenched as being the norm. How far do you think those consequences will be? So, of course, people will aspire to these positions of authority with the understanding that when you're in that position of authority, nothing will happen to you.
I think we have really contributed to this as the citizens, right? Because I believe at some point we're the ones who allow our leaders to get these bad manners, to get to a point where they feel and they believe that they're. Look, a first-time MP in the last parliament, first-time MP, was captured on video at some weighbridge, telling officers at the weighbridge, "We make the law." This law that you're telling me that you have broken the law, we make the law. So what's the problem? I'm the one who made the law. I can break it if I wanted to. And this is an MP who was in Parliament for the first time. It's an MP it's not an MP who had tried or has been in political circles for long. No. So if somebody can just get in and get to that level and they already get it in their head that what is the problem?
Not already get it into their head.
Another
but as the time they were getting there, they already knew that this is how it's going to be.
I'm getting there and I can operate the way I want to. I can behave the way I want to. This is a one-time MP. The other one is a nominated MP who's in his company. And they are asking officers, what's your problem, really?
Essentially,
Shida yako ni nini wewe?
The announcement here is that if I'm in a position of authority, political or otherwise, I'm above the law.
Yeah.
So now you tell me, what example does this set?
Completely. 9 o'clock. Good morning.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Traffic.
Today's looking at a pretty good day. On Mombasa Road, then we're out of it just past JKIA. It slows down right around Katani, moving towards JKIA. Maybe spend now maybe 15 minutes as opposed to 1 hour as you normally would, right? So it slows down a little, but it's moving. We're not at a bumper-to-bumper situation, not this morning on Mombasa Road at least. And then getting into the CBD then from Uhuru Highway is actually moving very well. Coming out of Langata Road towards Bagadio, even where the construction is taking place, good. Also on Gong Road. So today has been a good day as far as traffic is concerned. Let's keep it that way, shall we? Spice FM KE is how you can get to us on Twitter or text on 40127.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Okay. Hey, Don Kim has a solution. What is Don Kim saying?
He says the solution to this is a revolution. We'll keep talking till the end. Until you get out and say, we're actually tired of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to take you seriously. You're just there talking in the comfort of your living room, here, having a conversation here, until you show that you're actually serious. And you know what? I think actually it's true. Leaders actually, they know that you will talk, but then you will keep quiet. They know that doctors will go on strike, make noise, and then they'll go back to work. They know that clinical officers will get tired. They've not gotten a salary for a few months. They'll go back to work. They know that parents are going to make noise about this, that, the other thing, and eventually they will go back. They know that you're going to accept the status quo and you're not going to shout more than just a few decibels. After some time, you're going to keep quiet. They know this. And that's why they can continue doing whatever they want to do. If you show them that you drop a pin, you say, where, you show them that you're going to, everything that they bring to you know is unacceptable, you're going to make some noise about. They won't be joking around with you like this.
So their mentality is mtalala. Utapiga kelele.
But you just stop after some time. It's just like they say, the person who talks. After some time, they will keep quiet. They'll keep quiet. Then we move on.
Watalala.
But that's what you've shown them. At the end of the day, they'll stop. But we continue with this thing. Because that's the way it has always been.
Get Marie Antoinette and the family out. Okay. City, let's begin the hour with the day's proverb.
When a man is stung by a bee, he does not destroy all beehives.
Okay. When a man is stung by a bee, he doesn't destroy all beehives.
Yes, general idea.
Sawa. So what's happening regionally?
What's happening regionally is interesting, but there's disquiet. We are in a diplomatic tussle with our neighbor Somalia, and if you simply look at it really from a very simplistic perspective, Somaliland in its entirety is not really at ease. There's progress being made, but there are regional issues. If we go across to Ethiopia, we have, this one isn't, they are not ill at ease, they are in direct conflict. And that conflict, much as we keep hearing that is being resolved, the national government has the conflict is escalating at different levels. And the problem is there's a spillover. The spillover is usually in the form of human beings who've died and others who've had to move because of the conflict to Sudan and other places. If we go across to Uganda, they are anticipating an election And there's a lot of activity as a result of the players who want to be involved in this election. Tanzania has had an election and they're fairly quiet about it. But again, those who are in the opposition haven't entirely kept quiet. There's still issues about the election, there are complaints about the election. And before we have peace and quiet, let me say there will be some time. Now, when you talk about regional unity and you talk about the conflict that is within our regions, it becomes an issue of concern because any conflict in any part of our region tends to spill over into the neighboring countries. Either because human beings move because of the conflict, or Kenya as a country, Uganda as a country, whichever it is, you then have to begin different conversations with each other regarding how it is to ensure that there is stability. Because the thing that is consistent with conflict, it brings about instability. And that, unfortunately, is what we seems to be building up in this region, instability.
But is it anything new? I mean, it's one or the other. Somalia has been without a proper functioning government for very many years. Now we have had a transition of federal government and then a federal government over time. Now we are seeing Somalia itself, in its quest to stabilize itself internally, feeling like the neighbors are interfering. Neighbors here, it has had issues with Ethiopia for a long time. When they were, complaining about Ethiopia, the Somalis complaining about Ethiopia and Ethiopia's involvement in Somalia, wanting Ethiopia's troops to move out, Islamic Courts Union emerged. And were championing, no, we cannot be invaded. We have an invading force called the Ethiopians in this country. They've got to go out. That's one. Happened many years ago. Seems to have cooled off. Now again, we have another issue again. We have issues now with Somalia, with Kenya, about Jubaland. We're now dealing with Somaliland. Ethiopia is having its own issues within its own region. Ethiopia is having issues with the neighbors, Sudan and Egypt. It's nothing new. Sudan and South Sudan. Sudan itself, SPLA in government, SPLA in opposition. Issues. Is there anything new? But what is it that would bring us to a point where then we have proper, actual stability within this Horn of Africa?
Well, I think for sure it's nothing new. That's why, for example, Kenya has been picked as the darling of the West, at least in this area, because of the fact that everywhere around Kenya there has been instability. And that's why Kenya has been picked, where you have so many things, for example, going on. Military base off the coast of Kenya, United States, for example, friends with the UK and other Western, like that. Kenya is always the first. United Nations headquarters here, because relatively things are stable politically, economically, relatively. You wouldn't find the same decisions that have been made in terms of trade ties that have happened with Kenya happening with Djibouti, for example. It would not be happening with Somalia, for example. Hasn't happened because around there has always been this mushrooming of drama, right? For that reason is why Kenya was chosen. Does it mean that because it has been accepted or has been the norm that it should continue that way? No. But the reasons why these areas continue to be in conflict are historical. They did not just come about as a result of somebody having an argument in 1990. These are things that have been there that unfortunately have not been sorted out. And it segues to our previous conversation, whereby we said things that should have been dealt with, nipped in the bud when they were going on, unfortunately were not. And some of these things can be traced way back when we started to have rumblings of saying, you know what, we should have an organization for African unity. We should have a place where we can all come together and sit and speak on the same level. But what did that require? It required each and every nation to be able to get all their ducks in a row and say, sort out your issues. Because how are you going to come together unified whereby you have problems back at home? It would be very difficult for you to then come and advise and urge on issues of unity where you coming as a collective body, there's a problem in your backyard, you know? So I do think that it's about time. I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of exhaustive mentally, right? When you've said for the longest time, there has been conflict in this particular country. There has been conflict over an issue that cannot seem to be sorted out. desire to sort out the issue might be a problem. Nobody really wants to sort it out because there's some people who benefit. We know for a fact that there's some people who benefit from the war that continued in Sudan. And those could be Western powers. There are people who benefit from the constant conflict that is going on in Sudan. Humanitarian organizations, Western powers who say, you know what, there's something that we benefit from this happening here. We can give our aid, we can do this or this. So I think there are many more actors and many more players in this whole situation. And desire plays a role here. You really want to get it sorted out. I really do think that they can. You can get it sorted out. It doesn't have to be the way it has been forever. And unfortunately, yes, it's quite exhausting. And then my pet peeve is then, in terms of advice, this continental body that's supposed to be putting things together has to be more than just a PR organization. Has to actually get things done.
You know what you're discussing is a state that many countries in Europe were 16th, 17th century split, fractious, fighting. And every once in you then found attempts had been made to unify them, and then somebody came up and who was a brilliant tactician and a politician and was able to. In Italy, we had somebody by the name of Garibaldi. In Germany, we had somebody by the name of Otto von Bismarck. In the Balkan areas, we had Bro Tito. Now, when Tito died, unfortunately, that region went back to factory settings. Okay? There was fractures as there had been before. But even before then, remember, there had been what we call the Ottoman Empire. They had also brought in very many fractious nations together. So this was part of it. Now, some of the issues people were discussing when they had their conflict with their neighbors, my friend, you would think it happened the day before. It was a 1,000-year-old conflict. Now, Italy managed to stay united. Germany managed to stay united. Why am I talking about it? I'm talking about it because it's possible. These United States of America were not always united, but they agreed to be united. These aren't impossibilities. If you just look at a nation as it is, just one country, forget United Africa, one country, and the conflict that arises. There is no country in the world that doesn't have clans. We all have clans. They all have clans. But it's a question of how it is they think they can actually work together. That common understanding. Even Somali, that we think is fractious. Remember, there was a Somali nation before what we now have.
Yep.
And they had one president. Then things blew up. What am I saying? I am saying that we are taking the conflict that is within our boundaries in the Eastern African region as the norm, and I'm saying that it shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be. But if you look at what's at play, you have to ask the question, is it being allowed to play out because it is politically convenient? Or is it something that is beyond repairing? Remember, when the current Prime Minister of Ethiopia took power, the one thing that is attributed to him and is documented as such is how he tried to bring peace and to bring people who had differences together. Units that had previously been at loggerheads with each other for the longest time, units like Eritrea, who had even gone away and formed their own nation, there was an attempt to actually bring these units together. Now, this effort did not go unnoticed, and he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace. There were those who argued and said, a bit soon, surely. Okay? But remember that Ethiopia has a very, very unique configuration as a country. The regions that they have, or semi-autonomous as they are, remember, they have their own police units, remember. Remember, they even have militias that form like an army among their own. But if you go back into history, these regions were kingdoms. Please remember. And the conflict that you're talking about didn't start yesterday. These kingdoms have been at war for centuries, not at years, centuries. Now, it took someone who was strong enough to unify them and bring them under one nation. The emperor we all heard of was Haile Selassie. Now, he was a unifying factor in many ways. Now, issues came up. Again, the regions became autonomous or semi-autonomous, and issues arose. Now, there are things which are factors of time and influence, but it doesn't mean that that status quo, which doesn't benefit the common person in that country, should be maintained. Now, Why am I saying this? I'm saying, and Eric correctly put it, the conflict we have in Sudan, we understand it. That war was what, over 50 years? How on earth did it help the common citizen of Southern Sudan? How? Okay. Southern Sudan became a nation on its own, away from Sudan. But let me ask the question. Did that war really come to an end? The answer is no, not really. So long as you have militias who have leaders whom they follow and they look up to, yes, you may have a nation, but it's a nation at war.
At war.
Yes. How useful is it? Does it even enable that state? Does it enable the country to even harness the economic benefits it may have? The answer is no. Does it enable the country to do things that other nations that are unified do? No. So even they don't benefit from that state of war or conflict that they're in. And yet this is the state that we find ourselves in.
So the state of conflict that has for so long characterized so many countries,
yes,
as may have been seen historically as a point of necessity, is really not necessary.
No.
It really isn't necessary.
No.
For you to be able to get along, for you to be able to receive aid, for you to be able to receive bilateral talks here and there, because they really don't seem to have helped, is be able to sort out issues among you. Can actually decide and say, you know what, think about it. We really don't need to be here. It's possible for us to live in some kind of harmony and then to move this country forward. It is possible to have that conversation and get out of this characteristic conflicts that is always what is used to define a country.
But look at the conflicts that bring about war. Again, individual leaders think, feel, believe, and they have a following that a certain direction must be taken. Yeah. Suddenly, it's not a conflict, it's a full-scale war. How did we even have the so-called First World War and Second World War? How did we have these conflicts? Some people have expansionist ideas. They want to go beyond their boundaries, and they want to go take the armed forces into that country and rule them as they see fit. Look, there's nothing new we're talking about here. We're not talking about something that has begun happening in the 21st century. It's something that mankind has lived with for the longest time. And yet the lesson that we see having been learned from countries that have overcome it is the progress that they make. My point of call here is Germany. Look at how strong Germany is, even arising from the Second World War. They managed to understand the differences, at least put most of the divisive issues aside, or at least have them as just a talking point. But because they've worked as that unit, look at how it is. What is it, for instance, that makes Kenya unique? We have issues, many issues, but we seem to have found a way of working together as a unit with our issues.
Everything else notwithstanding.
Yes, but we're saying it can be better. You see, this is the discussion here. It doesn't have to remain this way.
It really doesn't.
It can be better.
There's something that can be done. 17 minutes after 9. Let's take a break now, see what's happening in terms of the weather, and then we continue this conversation. And you can join the conversation as well, 0719 012 600.
Spice FM.
It's getting hot in here.
Oh, everybody steals. It's better a thief who brings something small back. And I say to myself, there's no better thief. A thief is a thief, period.
All those bribes, how much they're getting per year, how much inconvenience they're causing. As much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted.
The truth is, we are a tribal nation. Because if we were not tribal, and I want to go back to this, you cannot continue walking around with a mug which is clean outside and it's rotten inside.
We have become a fuliza country. We have mortgaged our country because of debt.
You've got one chef working and the assistant chef wakati anatakana koroge unga nini hayuko.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, so we're going to look at mostly sunny conditions in Nairobi today, going to highs of 26. The low will be 17. Sunny as well in Nakuru with highs of 27 and lows of 12. It's going to be a sunny day in Nyeri as well at 17, highs of 26 and lows of 10. It's warming up slightly in Eldoret now at 13 degrees and mostly sunny with highs of 24 and lows of 11. It's partly sunny in Kisumu. The clouds will come out with a slight chance of rain later, highs of 29 and lows of 19. 31 will be the high in Kakamega today and lows of 14. It's sunny now at 20. Light rain this morning in some parts of Mombasa at 28. Go to highs of 30 and lows of 25. 50% chance of rain today. Partly sunny conditions in Malindi at 20. The high will be 30 and lows of 16. It's sunny in Kampala at 28. We'll see highs of 26 and lows of 18. It's partly sunny in Dar es Salaam at 28. The high will be 31. Still sunny conditions in Johannesburg at 18. We'll see highs of 24 and lows of 16 and an 80% chance of rain today. Clear skies now in Lagos at 24, going to highs of 31. It's mostly cloudy in Kinshasa at 24. We'll see highs of 32, -1, and sunny in Beijing. We'll see lows of -9 today, and coming back to a high of only -1. 9 degrees and mostly cloudy in Paris, going to highs of 11. 12 will be the high in London, currently mostly cloudy at 10, coming down to 9. And finally, for now, in New York, 9 degrees. We'll see highs of just that, coming then down to lows of 1.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
20 after 9. Forever Mike says, the issue of unrest in the region is fueled by greed. The day greed is eliminated, there will be peace.
You know, it sounds simplistic, but it isn't. If you look at personal interests, which is often manifested in greed, you realize that, yes, if you take it to a national level, if you take it to a regional level, then the manifestation of it, one, you will cross paths with many people. If they're willing to put up with you crossing paths, then there'll be peace. If they disagree with you, there will be conflict. If they disagree with you and they're willing to make a point of it and hold their ground, there'll be a long-lasting conflict. Yes. Now, these long-lasting conflicts that we keep talking about, ask yourself, much as there's talk about there being so that they can have a better country, is that really at the heart of it? The answer is no. At the heart of it, those who are in positions of leadership are perpetrating, a situation that will guarantee they stay there, because much as they perpetrate it, they're the ones who also present themselves as the people who can provide a solution to the problem. That's number one.
Whereas they are the problem.
Usually they are the problem. But then on the other hand, you have a situation where, because of the conflict, the conversation now is around the conflict and not about everything else that they should actually be discussing. So, if you are the one who's presented themselves as the person who has the possibility of a solution, then your status is maintained.
But if we were to look at it now practically with what we have, so we seem to be having, we actually are in a diplomatic tiff with Somalia, all right? And this is about our involvement or alleged involvement, which our Foreign Affairs Ministry has denied, with the elections in Somalia and in particular Jubaland. Okay, so this is something that is right there with us. What does it reflect about our foreign policy? Remember, when the Jubilee government took over in 2013, one of the things that Uhuru said is he wants to shift our foreign policy. Our foreign policy will not just be about how we engage with other countries. It's what kind of beneficial engagement we have with other countries. It's not just at who you are. No, you're our friend, but what do you mean as our friend? I mean, what do you mean to us as our friend? What do we get out of this friendship? So, here we are. We've had the kind of on-off, cold, warm, lukewarm kind of relationship with Tanzania for many years. Look at what has happened with our Kenya relationship with Tanzania. Now, Kenya's relationship with Somalia. Somalia, a country whose leaders we hosted here for many years. Naivasha, we hosted in Machakos, trying to bring peace, trying to make sure that we have a transition of federal government, even championing the kind of election that they're going to have. We get to a point now where the president of Somalia can say that we are interfering with their country. Even getting to a point of expelling our ambassador and recalling their ambassador. What does that say about our foreign policy? Are we shifting? Are we failing? Are we missing the point? And as I say that about our foreign policy, also, you've got to consider that we have presented one candidate for two global positions, and this candidate has not been able to win. AU Commission President Amina Mohammed didn't win. We've gone to the WTO, same, didn't win. Does it say something about our foreign policy?
Well, I don't know if it says something about the foreign policy of a nation if individuals are not being selected for a top post. in as much as maybe those who came in contention were being offered up at the same time presented more in terms of potential. I don't know if it would be that. However, I do see that there has been a shift in Kenya's foreign policy if you want to actually look specifically at what has been happening with Somalia. Before, it was a hand-holding kind of courtship, romanticizing the whole, peace process. And the same thing happened with Sudan, whereby it was just a hello moment, let's invite you, let's see how we can sort these things out together. The leaders came here and stayed here, basically lived rent-free for a long time while Kenya stood in the position of advisor. I think it was necessary as times changed, as even global trends turned towards a more succinct approach towards nationalism, whereby we had gotten to that place where there was the globalization concept where everybody was coming together and having a kumbaya moment as nations. It then shifted towards nationalism where everybody was very interested then in these relationships and what they could garner for themselves. So I don't think it was just Kenya. I think if you look around the world, you would see that the same thing was happening. Everybody was entering into relationships, partnerships, or bolstering the existing friendships and partnerships to much more than let's just be friends, to the point whereby what is in it for me? And if there's nothing in it for me, then we could either let it get to the point where it's soured or, fizzled out.
But it looks like we've gotten to a point where all our friends don't think they're getting anything from us.
Or that you're not
Uganda
getting
is going into a pipeline with Tanzania. Tanzania is not doing what it would have been doing with Kenya.
Well, I mean,
Somalia is recalling.
But isn't that what happens?
Ethiopia, we are trying to bring our prime minister to come and.
But isn't that what happens when you're in a relationship and you see that it's not doing anything for you? You go to the one for whom it's doing something for you.
Which talks about
for
our
example,
foreign policy.
For example, Kenya was and maybe still continues to be in a now maybe has gone a little bit tepid relationship in terms of aid with the United States. What happened? Go to China where the conditions were not as strict or as tight. And what they give you aid. Again, same thing. The same thing that you could see that countries were doing with Kenya and did not get the benefit where they thought. Going into relationship with Uganda and Tanzania coming together where you didn't think it would happen before. Where it would seem as if Kenya was the big brother of the region. Not so much. Where it would seem as if the United States was the big brother of the world. Where are people going then? Most recent
forget
China,
about
Uganda.
America, I'm on Kenya. So what does that say about Kenya? What then does that mean about Kenya? Is it that our friends have woken up and realized something? Or is it that we have failed to read the signs? That we have gotten to a point where we just sat back and assumed.
It could be that for the longest time where everybody thought that Kenya was the go-to guy, it's clear that other people have potential to be able to offer what you need.
Yeah, but Kenya is off, so not playing the game.
That's then
You've
something
got
that Kenya
to be
has
the
to
one
sort
who's
out.
also attracting. That's the point I'm trying to
So
make.
it's clear in this case they're not.
Eric, let's start. I want to start my discussion from the point of view of the pipeline that you spoke of. It was in the papers and issues were raised. And the predominant issue was one of cost. What the Kenya government expected the Ugandan government to pay for that particular service, the Ugandan government were not willing to pay. And they categorically said that even if they looked at what was available and what was the market rate, we were charging way above what was expected. We seem to have chased away our would-be partners simply because of what Kenyans had said would be the cost of it. Cost alone.
Yep.
Okay? So they went to cheaper. That's all they did. They looked for a partner who would offer the same sort of deal, but it would cost them less. But if you're talking about costs, we do have a history of having or applying costs to things that are exorbitant and far more for the same services than our neighbors. If you want to talk about the railway, if you're talking about capital developments that we've had in the country, if you mirror something similar in our neighboring country, you'll find that ours is usually exorbitantly higher than our neighbors. So, is this an issue of foreign policy or is it an issue of national policy when it comes to how we do our business, which is now reflecting on how we do business with our neighbors?
Because it would spill over, however you choose to look at it. If that's the way that you're used to operating in country, there is no way it will not spill over to how you do business with your neighbors. If that has changed within the country or it has never shown its face before and now is how it's showing up, if that's the way you do business regularly, if that's the way you operate regularly, it'll be very difficult for you to do business differently with those who surround you.
Yeah.
Or your neighbors.
And yet you have people who sit and they are considering all these things. They are considering what benefit you're going to get when you deal with others. right? So what is it that then, what did they miss? When you can clearly see that the issue of cost is going to be a big issue here, and yet you know that you need to have that service. You need to be the one who's offering that service. When you talk about our port of Mombasa, yes, there's a lot of improvement that has been done to the port of Mombasa so that we can still be the port of call for very many of these countries in the region. If Tanzania just upped its game a little bit, then we start losing ground on that. So what does it say? Are we competing, or are we just sitting back and saying watakuja?
No, we did
Because
change.
that's the way it was before.
If you remember, Eric, there was an issue even with goods moving from the port of Mombasa to Uganda. And the issues were raised to the point where President Museveni was brought into the discussion because their equivalent of the Chamber of Commerce had formally complained about what we're doing with their goods and the charges that we're levying, yet they were on transit. And this issue of things moving from Mombasa, then to Naivasha, then to Uganda. Wait, why must it stop? Why doesn't it just go to Uganda as it used to be? We seem to have been applying these triple, double, funny, twisted standards that we apply to our own citizens. We're trying to twist these same standards with other people, and they were saying, no, we are.
With the expectation
Yes.
that as you twist them and give it to them, that they're going to just accept
sit
it
back and
and
accept
take
it.
it
And they were
sitting
saying
down.
no.
And they also, as you're sitting here saying that this way in which you're going to do business, remember that time has also been going along for them. And they've realized policies that they want to also push for themselves. They're not just sitting down looking at time passing. They're also working on things for their countries and their policy. So then you're going to come back and say, okay, yeah, well, this is the way it's going to be. And they're going to tell you, unfortunately, no. We also have been thinking and progressing. So we're not just going to take it because it has always been that way, that Kenya will come and say something to us and we'll just take it because, yeah, they're the big brother. No, they're also progressing and moving forward.
9:30. Take a break now. Let's see what's happening on the roads.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Hii krisi tukiwapea mtawezana. Star Times brings you the FKF Premier League. Hii ligi ni yetu, twende nayo. You can also enjoy the Europa League, La Liga and FA Cup. To enjoy, simply get a satellite dish for only 2,699 shillings and aerial decoder for only 1,499 shillings and watch the FKF Premier League live and in HD exclusively on BTV channel 172 and 463. Recharge for 2 months and get upgraded for 2 months or call 0719 077 000.
Traffic.
Started off the week in fine form this morning as terms traffic. So it looks like it's going to be a good day today, and hopefully this will translate into the week. Very little traffic in most parts of the city today, and also this is spilling over into other parts of the country. It's settled down quite a bit, or it could just be Monday. Let's wait and see what happens tomorrow. But for now, enjoy it while you can. But please be extremely careful. I know the temptation is to go a little bit faster. We still have that issue right around Ole Sereni as you're approaching the southern bypass. So that vehicle has been moved to the side of the road and they're trying to get it out of the way. So approach with caution so that you don't get messed up there. All right. Other than that, it looks pretty good, folks. Spice FMKE through the day. Talk to us on Twitter or text on 40127.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
You just had on that promo that we've just played, where Edwin Sifuna was a guest of this show one time, and he said, manners you're taught by your mother, you're not taught by your party. That's the time we were having a conversation about the Embakasi what? One of those Embakasis.
MP, yeah.
Babu, we know. And the incident that has been facing with regards to a shooting at a club. And I was saying manners is not something that you're taught by a party. You're taught by your mother. Now, the clip that has been chapping laps over the weekend, that chapping laps story over the weekend, is the Msambweni by-election campaigns, and various opposing parties were there. The leading candidates. There's an ODM candidate who is the one whose polls are saying is a front runner, and the other one is an independent candidate. So the ODM and the ODM brigade has been on the ground. The governor of Kwale has been on the ground campaigning for the independent candidate, and also this independent candidate is getting the support of the Tanga wing of Jubilee. So Aisha Jumwa, the Malindi MP, was in Msambweni over the weekend campaigning, and in one of those rallies she talked about how we can fight this thing, we can win this thing, amwezi kututisha. And then she said, I have also heard, just to translate, I've also heard that there are people who are saying that they have planned to do things to me. In which she went ahead to say, you know what, things have been done to me already. And you know what this means, basically, in the sexual connotation of it. Mimi si bikra. Then, in response to this, at a separate rally, ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna is captured on video talking about what Aisha Jumwa has said and saying, look, even if we wanted to do this, we'd have to look and see and choose who you do this to. Now, there are people who are there who are clapping and they were cheering, and Sifuna would then get the fuel and fire to go on. But when you watch that clip, you ask yourself, okay, wait a minute. At what point do we get to a point where we actually throw such kind of jabs at one another and it's normal? Is this where manners are taught by political party or by mother or by ulimwengu?
Actually, I'm glad you brought it up, but pause for a second. These are leaders we're talking about. One was actually duly elected and is a member of parliament. And so there is a likelihood that this is somebody who could have risen to a fairly high office beyond that of a member of parliament in the country of Kenya. Someone who's the Secretary General of a major party can also has the likelihood of rising. Now, you see these things, and why do you quickly forget? Because these are people who decide to show you their underbelly. See, this is the public domain that this discussion is being had. What makes you think that when this person is in a position of authority, they will have changed?
They don't do us.
And what makes you think that this is a person or these are people who are responsible enough to take your interest, if they do not seem to have the modicum of understanding to determine whether certain things should be said in private or in public? What makes you think that your life, which is actually in the public domain, will be of concern to such an individual? What makes you think? Look, take this to a national level, all right? And look at how consequences have, should we say, well, they have a time and an age in which they become prominent. Look at the way our borders were set. Just look at Kenya and look at the people we border and tell me, there is no place where we border another country where we do not have communities crisscrossing from both ends. And some have been doing that for the longest time. Now, with reference to Somali, Jubaland is our neighbor as Kenya, literally, next to us. So what do you think? People who come from that part of the country, as we know it as Somalia, have been part and parcel of the Kenyan landscape for the longest time. You go to the western part of the country, you'll find the same thing. If you go to the Mara area, which now borders what we now call Senegal, you'll find the same thing. You can't escape it. So if you have a situation where there is conflict in a country like, say, Somali, you really think that people who originally came from what we're now calling Jubaland and who have been domiciled in Kenya for the longest time and still have relations there, you think they're not going to have a say? They will have a say. But the question, and where the issue of the influence or our foreign policy comes in, is what do we do about it? And how is it that our foreign policy comes into play, and how does it benefit us? Because we are being sucked into a discussion of conflict within another country. And we're being sucked in by them saying that we are part and parcel of the conflict that is there. And yet the conflict existed long before any of our forces ever went to that country. The African Union forces went there. The UN-backed forces went there. The Ethiopian, these conflicts have been there. And if you talk about conflict, remember, Ethiopia and Somalia had their issues in the organ for the longest time. What am I saying? I'm saying that when you talk about conflict and you talk about policy, you cannot divorce yourself from the one constant, the type of leadership that is there. Sometimes in leadership, it is important to ensure that you point at your problems as coming from a certain direction, not of your own. Our politicians do that all the time, don't they? It's not our problem. It's somebody else's problem. Someone is causing it. So it looks like it's a political position that people take when they haven't thought beyond being where they are. Have we not seen the American president playing this game right throughout his presidency, and now with the election? Have we not seen it? Remember, it was the Russians, huh? Then it's not being the Russians, it's somebody. There's always someone else who's responsible for this thing. And there's always someone else who should take blame for things that are under your purview and for decisions that even you have made. Somehow, someone else is supposed to be responsible. So, my friends, when we talk about this issue of conflict in our region, so long as the sort of leaders we have continue thinking the way they do, I do not see these conflicts coming to an end. If anything, I see them escalating.
Going to get worse.
Yes, it will. Not just worse, it'll get much worse. And if you have a problem like that COVID has brought up, which you didn't ask for, coming into play as well, what do you think? The misery of the common citizen will not decrease, it will increase. So, internal strife will also, of necessity, increase. And if you have some historical issues that had not been resolved, they will also increase.
But there's a solution for all of these things.
There always is a solution.
So I'm going to go back to that individual who said, you're talking about greed. And now when we hear about greed, then you would think that it's just for possessions. But there's also greed in terms of the limelight and of the space whereby you want everybody to be looking at you. And if you're able to get over those hang-ups, then that's probably where you would look at where a solution could come from. But look, it's the input that then determines the output. If the input is purely for selfish interest, whether you want to look at it nationally, with some of the squabbles that we've seen over the weekend and some of the nonsense that was being said, which are just, indicative of bad manners, and that was the question that Eric was asking, is that what it is? Absolutely, that's what it is. The input is what would determine the output. If it's selfish interest, that's what you will see.
But
if it's for the good of the country, you will also see the same thing. You would also see an end to some of these conflicts.
Not. Yes, you would, and yes, you wouldn't. Remember, the currency of self-interest is a very important currency in human dealings. The reason why people agree is because they stand to see benefit in it. And the other party agrees because they can see their benefit. So, it plays an important role. Do you think this handshake that we are talking about in this country is because just one party is going to benefit? The answer is no, resoundingly no. These things come into being because the interests that other people have, the commonality is in this understanding will make me realize my benefit and I also stand to benefit. And if you bring in other people, they also stand to benefit. Now, the discussion we've been having since morning is how does the so-called common man benefit from all this? And that is what has been elusive. How those in power benefit, we can see. They can see. How it trickles down, elusive.
Something that's elusive, that means it can be found somewhere, right? Maybe not see it today, but it's somewhere. In this case, I'm saying it's non-existent. It's not there. How Mwananchi can benefit from this nonsense that we see taking place, how Mwananchi can benefit from the conflict that you see taking place outside the borders of Kenya, it doesn't exist.
When you talk
it's not an illusion.
When you talk about theft right from the source of it, not theft that you find when a process is being undertaken, like a road is being built and the cost is hyped, or they don't quite build it the standard they should, but you actually do see a road. Not that. It is that lack of understanding that if you increase the capacity of your people, it's a simple economic fact. and they're all able. You know what you do? The very source that you steal from will be more abundant, so there is more to steal. Okay,
Actually, if that's what
yes,
your
if
point,
you're inclined towards theft, okay, wait for it to become really big, then there'll be a lot to steal from,
be a
as
lot
opposed to
more.
this one. When you steal from source, so you minimize and you eliminate the growth of it, so you actually kill it.
That's very futuristic. People think
It's
about
not.
the now.
It is realistic because
People think about the now. Let's hear from Ephraim. Is in Embu. Ephraim, good morning.
Good morning to you guys. How are you?
We're fine, thank you.
It is good to hear from you, and the conversations are a real blessing.
Sante sana.
There is something that I wanted to say. Any conflict that you find anywhere in the whole world, be it for individuals, group of individuals, countries, or the world, or the regions, they are only fought for only 3 reasons. The first reason, there is a pot of gold. That is wealth. The second one is religious differences. Let me first of all explain kidogo juu ya wealth. If it is individuals, you find people fighting, picking pangas, cutting one another because they are fighting over a plot of land. They are fighting over some money or some economic benefit in one way or another. Most conflicts around the world are fought for economic reasons. Think about it this way. Who sells the arms in these conflicts? Those people are beneficiaries of that conflict.
Yeah.
If you find people fighting over BBI, for example, political fights that you find every now and then, they are simply fought because of economic reasons and no other reason whatsoever.
Okay.
I don't want to go deeper into the issues of religious differences because everyone knows in history how much blood has been shed because of differences in religious opinions. And so I will not go into the detail because you know Northern Ireland and even South Ireland wanakuanga wanapigana kila wakati.
Yeah. So reason
Simply
number
because
3.
of religious differences. Reason number 3 may be controversial kidogo. It is something to do with the sex. Believe it or not. How many people have fought over a certain love relationship? There are so many of them. And you can imagine what problems would occur if 2 very powerful families disagree on a relationship for one reason or another, their daughter hawataki aolewe na mtu mwingine. Those wars, they are fought for a very long time. Those are the only 3 reasons why people fight all over the world. Investigate and you'll be able to see. Be it in your own office there, be it in the streets that you shall go, be it in the countries that you shall visit, and whichever conflict that you shall analyze, you will find those 3 reasons and nothing more.
Thank you for your observation, Ephraim.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
You too. 0719-012-600. Time for us to take a quick break at 12 minutes to 10 o'clock. We're still taking your calls, looking at the regional conflict, looking at what's happening in the region. Why is it that we have such a restive Horn of Africa, time over time? Now we're getting to a point where we have direct diplomatic tiff between Kenya and Somalia. Today, the president is hosting the Somaliland president, and everybody is observing and seeing, this is just trying to stick a finger at the president of Somalia itself and telling them, we have options within that whole region of yours. We have options. We can, set up our own relations with somebody else. We'll be back shortly.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Mornings. Regions conflict are fueled by status quo, lack of equitable distribution of resources. It's resource fights.
But most conflicts are about resource. And then the conflict, though, is something that can actually be resolved quickly. But then sometimes conflict is ignited and it's furthered because now then the political interests and whatever expansionist ideas or an absence of good governance comes in, because conflict then takes conversation into a completely different direction. When there's conflict, you talk about the conflict as opposed to whatever else the leader is supposed to be doing. So, and when you say, look, I like to offer an interpretation of what I see in Somaliland. We don't know what our leaders discuss with each other and what they agree on. Sometimes when someone seems to be kicking a fuss, it's because there was something that they had an understanding over, and somebody has either reneged or has not kept the promise that they made. Now, we are good at not keeping promises. It's something we consistently do well. Oh, no, we're very good at it. You think if the government doesn't keep its promises to its people, it's going to keep its promises to other nations. The likelihood is it's the same leadership, the same decision-making process. They'll probably decide, but after all, why must we? What are they going to do anyway? Leave it as it is. So it's a thinking that, unfortunately, we see every day from our leaders and our decision makers and holders. So it is not impossible for them to have carried that same attitude with our neighbors. We've seen it playing out when we have common projects that we want to have, and we seem to just charge what we like, and people tell you, no, we're not paying, we're not going to pay for that. So my interpretation is sometimes someone determines that, look, I may be weaker right now, but I don't have to put up with this nonsense. So since I don't have to, this is the position I'm going to take. And then let's see what you will do with it.
Let's actually see what you're going to do about it.
Now, we are fermenting conflict right now. So we decide, okay, since we know your country is fragmented into semi-autonomous regions.
Let's be friends with one of those other regions.
We are friends with Madobe, now we are also going to be friends with the other guy.
Yes.
So you also realize that we still have some power in your own backyard.
And you wonder...
Sometimes it's a good pushback.
The enemy of your enemy is your friend, Abi.
Sometimes it's good pushback. Yeah. Look, if you're getting somebody who is trying to show you that, they can throw a tantrum, show them, okay, you throw your tantrum on that side, I can still deal within your country. You throw your tantrum. So we have issues with maritime boundaries. We have issues now here, you're saying, about elections and the kind of interference that you're alleging that we have interference with your country. Well, the allegation
may be true.
But let's have a conversation around that, about what you're saying. Now, you get to a point where you're saying, by the time a country is recalling its ambassador and sending your ambassador home, that is getting to a point where you're clearly saying, look, this one is not working. Okay? So, and that just comes, was it months or was it weeks after the president has come to this country? Farmer Joe was in this country just the other day. So come on, sometimes push back like that and show them, you go away. Die away.
All right. But a solution will be found. I think if a point is being made, it has been made, and there'll be a little merry-go-round of each one trying to show that they have a point, and then they will come to an understanding.
It's unfortunate, but suffice to say that for all of these conflicts, however delicate they may seem, however brutal they might have been in terms of warring, that there is a solution. There is a solution. And it just would seem that those who are in a position to bring about the solution are reluctant because there's certain control or power that conflict brings. And the same thing we were talking about before. This power is sweet, whereby the responsibility rests on your shoulders to bring about some kind of peace. But guess what? Once you relinquish that control, the likelihood of attention then being on you as one of the players or actors to bring about this peace is removed. So this attention doesn't shine on you anymore. Remember that we're dealing with human beings. They are in a position best placed to be able to bring about peace. But bringing about that peace means that some attention then moves away from you. And then attention is given then in terms of what you should do to make sure that development continues so that this conflict doesn't come about again.
Okay.
So now you have a role to play. The responsibility comes back to your shoulders. So the eye is on you, not in terms of, okay, bring about peace. But now that there's peace, do your job.
Since we're dealing with regional governments now as opposed to the Somali government, Al-Shabaab is a regional government for all intents and purposes. Do you see a situation where we're actually talking to Al-Shabaab?
We don't recognize it as such.
Oh, we haven't gotten there yet, have we?
No, it's not recognized as a
And
government.
do you see a situation where we might actually get there? Because they're a government. Remember, they levy taxes. They provide services.
There's what they do. Maybe at a point, if it makes sense, then there's going to be a conversation with them. Remember, there are conversations with the ICC. They're not the ICU, Islamic Courts Union. So we could get to that point where, yes, you have a conversation. At the end of the day, it's what does it do?
You know, as
what impact? What am I looking for? Am I able to get it?
You know, with the exception of Tanzania, if you look at the leadership that we have in our regions right now, they began as guerrilla fighters. They didn't win an election with the others. They got the other ones out, and then they got in. Just look at our region. Pick a country.
Somalia. Our former Joe was in Siad Barre's government.
Precisely. But it's fragmented, fought, and the result is that you have these semi-autonomous regions. So it isn't one unified whatever, isn't it? So he won an election, contested, even the win. But Uganda, Museveni may have gone through some elections. He didn't come in through an election. Kagame did not get into power through an election. If you look at Sudan, yes, they've had some form of election, but you know how that is going even as we speak right now. Ethiopia has had elections. They're where they are. What I'm trying to say is this, when you have the sort of situation that has predominated a region for a long time, it becomes very difficult to shed it. The reason is, if you look at Southern Sudan and the years they've been at war, I would argue that people are more used to fighting than they are.
They don't know anything else.
Being at peace. Yes.
They don't know anything else.
So when there's an issue, they're not likely to talk. They're likely to fight. So those of us who've had many seasons of talking, let's not move from that region of ours where we keep talking. This talking is good.
Coming to the top of the hour then. So today's proverb, and why today's proverb?
When a man is stung by a bee, it does not destroy all beehives. The fact that you have many political leaders who seem to present themselves as the antithesis to any development you may have, it doesn't mean that all MPs are the same. There are MPs who actually do what they're supposed to, just like they are governors. Unfortunately, there are not that many. And what predominates our landscape is not a bee stinging you, but many bees stinging you. So when you have the likelihood of thinking that you would like to get rid of all beehives, it's with reason. But the truth of the matter is that there are leaders who actually abide by what they had said or promised that they would do, and they try to fulfill it.
Fulfill it.
Such leaders do exist. My prayer is that we see more and more of them as opposed to fewer and fewer.
So there's some good bees in the beehive. So how do you get rid of the bad bees in the beehive?
Is that not the subject of our discussion tomorrow?
Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, and C.T. Muga wishing you a lovely day. We're already in Christmas season. Even the traffic is reduced and, people are chilled out. We're having these easy conversations about, wow, the government is not doing what it's supposed to be doing because the government is on holiday.
Mhm.
The president is now also on holiday from
Today,
Saturday
tomorrow.
until
He's on holiday, is he?
time next year.
He said so.
Taking it easy.
For a month.
Yeah. So, see you tomorrow. We'll be on holiday. It's 10 o'clock.